In this world, a mysterious energy known as mana flows through all things, yet only a select few, known as mages, can harness it. Among them is Kanado, a young man who channels this power through his hands to help others. He uses his gifts to run the local Isekai clinic, performing intricate techniques like fascia release and pelvic realignment to restore the bodies and energy of his patients. This vital work takes place in Manutuka, a peaceful country town nestled in the eastern reaches of the Ruhuna Kingdom. Stepping outside after a successful session, the young practitioner receives heartfelt thanks from a burly man who feels completely rejuvenated by the treatment. As he walks through the village, he is greeted warmly by the locals, modestly dismissing their praise while keeping a keen eye on their physical well-being, even noticing when a wound has healed faster thanks to his magic. The conversation turns to the grander magic of the Adventurers Guild, but the humble healer insists that his abilities are merely for therapeutic adjustment, far removed from the flashy spells of warriors. His peaceful afternoon is suddenly interrupted by a familiar voice calling out his name as Liney. The innkeeper's daughter rushes toward him just as he finishes his daily appointments. She immediately puts him on the spot, using her most persuasive, sparkling gaze to ask for a loan, leaving her childhood friend exasperated by her predictable antics. She tightened her grip, grinding her knuckles into his scalp with a playful yet painful intensity that made him cry out in protest, fearing his head might actually split open. Releasing him with a sheepish apology, she admitted her aggressive tactics were inspired by a questionable book on persuasion. As he urged her to discard such literature, she reached into her satchel and produced a small, wooden box containing a withered, dying plant. She explained that a guest at the inn was deeply fond of the flora, which had suddenly begun to fail. Despite her multiple part-time jobs, she lacked the immediate funds to replace it and hoped for a miracle from her childhood friend. He took the box, observing that even simple plants possessed a flow of mana, though this one's energy was tangled and chaotic. He pondered if his unique skills in realignment could restore its natural order and bring it back to life. With a focused expression, he began the delicate process, first drawing out the decay and infusing the soil with water before invoking his magic. He called upon the power of Isekai acceleration, his hands glowing as he channeled energy into the struggling life form. The effect was instantaneous, as the plant surged with vitality, its leaves becoming thick and robust. While she marveled at the transformation and jokingly asked for a similar physical enhancement for herself, he cautioned that such intense magical acceleration would be far too taxing for a human body. Their light-hearted exchange was interrupted by the sound of slow, rhythmic clapping as three strangers approached. They revealed they had been seeking the mage from the rumors, their presence casting a sudden shadow over the clinic's entrance. These individuals were adventurers, members of elite guilds who traversed the realm to conquer labyrinths and slay monsters. Unlike the therapeutic magic practiced in the clinic, these were experts forged in the fires of combat, and their arrival signaled a shift in the peaceful atmosphere. He and his companions stood outside the clinic, recalling how Liney had directed them to this specific building. Stepping inside, the group approached the young man behind the counter while Liney offered a cheerful farewell to a departing patient. The leader wasted no time, stating they had heard rumors of a remarkably powerful mage residing here, though the young man immediately tried to downplay his own abilities. He snapped his fingers to emphasize his point, revealing that he had been observing the young man's work and heard Liney's glowing praise regarding his contributions to the town. Leaning in with intense curiosity, he questioned if the magic possessed the power to control nature itself. In response, the young man corrected him, explaining that his craft was actually therapeutic in nature, a discipline he called Isekai magic used primarily to treat physical ailments. This unfamiliar term gave the visitor pause, prompting the young man to further clarify that his technique simply applied magic to the body to accelerate its natural regenerative processes. While Liney hid her face in embarrassment at the awkward exchange, the other adventurers marveled at the results, watching as a patient flexed a shoulder that was no longer stiff thanks to the treatment. Despite the humble explanation, the leader remained undeterred, insisting that the ability to use magic at all made the young man special. He then revealed the true purpose of their visit, a request for him to join them in the southwestern forest to assist in the slaying of a dragon. The word hung in the air, leaving the young mage wide-eyed and breathless as the sheer scale of the request finally sank in. He listens as the leader presses the point, explaining that such unique magic is the key to ensuring the party remains in peak condition during the hunt. The man emphasizes that Kanado's presence isn't just a help, but an essential component for the success of the mission to slay the dragon. In response, the young healer asks for a moment to consider the weight of the request, while his companion's eyes light up at the mention of a referral fee, despite her voiced concerns for his safety. The leader agrees to the delay, assuring them that they will be compensated for their cooperation. As the leader prepares to depart, the boy remains seated, quietly acknowledging his own limitations while the weight of the decision settles over him. He admits to himself that he is well aware of what he can and cannot do, even as the opportunity to join a real party hangs in the air. Before leaving, the man adds a final warning about the dragon's potential threat to the town itself, promising to wait by the gates until nightfall for a final answer. He makes it clear that while they won't force him, the safety of the entire region might depend on his choice. Walking together afterward, the two friends recall their childhood, when he had once dreamed of becoming an adventurer to help as many people as possible. She reminds him of how often he spoke of that goal, though he admits his current hesitation stems from a lack of confidence in his own combat abilities. She looks at him with a soft, earnest expression, suggesting that letting such a dream fade away without ever trying would be a tragic waste. She believes that simply letting it remain a dream is a loss, and that he should consider following through on his original path. The sun begins to set over the quiet clinic, casting long shadows across the wooden walls as the day draws to a close. Entering the familiar warmth of his home, he finds the burly man from earlier relaxing with a steaming drink, greeting him with a simple nod as he returns from his long day of contemplation. He stares intently at the medical treatise, his mind racing with the dire warnings he received earlier. The weight of the town's safety rests heavily on his shoulders as he considers the terrifying possibility of a dragon attack and wonders if he truly has what it takes to intervene. Noticing his hesitation, the elderly woman hands him the book with a warm, encouraging smile. She expresses her immense pride in his skills as a Isekai practitioner, assuring him that she would be honored to see him take his talents out into the wider world to help those in need. With a final, grateful word to his grandmother, he clutches the treatise to his chest and steps out from the Monaluka clinic. Her parting words of encouragement follow him into the cool night air as he sets off toward the town gates. His resolve finally hardened. At the edge of the settlement, the cloaked leader and his companions wait patiently in the shadows. A smirk plays on the man's lips as he spots a figure approaching through the darkness, confirming that their recruitment effort has successfully drawn the young healer out. He arrives breathless and hunched over, gasping out a sincere apology for his tardiness. The physical exertion of his hurried journey is evident in his posture, but his presence at the meeting point speaks volumes about the choice he has made. Straightening up with a look of intense resolve, he pleads with the group to take him along, expressing a desperate hope that the skills he has spent years learning might actually be of use in the coming conflict. The leader is visibly pleased by this sudden display of initiative. While he honestly admits that the task ahead might be far beyond his current capabilities, he declares a burning desire to discover exactly how far his potential can take him. This display of raw ambition and honesty earns an approving, toothy grin from the seasoned adventurer. As the group begins their trek into the wilderness, he tentatively inquires if they have a specific strategy for the hunt. The leader merely snaps his fingers with a nonchalant air, indicating that the objective is just ahead and suggesting that their plan is as straightforward as it is bold. He suddenly lunged, his hand clamping firmly over the boy's mouth to stifle any outcry. With a cold smirk, he explained that the entire charade had been a ruse to lure the young healer to this specific spot. Dragging his captive along, he spat out his disdain, lamenting that the boy's magic was merely Isekai, a discipline he deemed utterly worthless. The young healer struggled against the iron grip, his muffled protests ignored as they moved deeper into the shadows. The man continued his chilling revelation, noting that while magic users were rare, this boy was a particularly valuable prize. He then shattered the illusion entirely, admitting that they were never adventurers and that the threat of a dragon was nothing more than a fabrication. Amidst the mocking laughter of the group, the heavy iron bars of a makeshift cell creaked open. The captors showed no mercy, shoving their prisoner into the cold, damp enclosure as the sun began to set over the rugged terrain. The boy hit the hard ground with a dull thud, his limbs bound tightly by coarse rope. He let out a pained groan, the reality of his betrayal and imprisonment finally sinking in as the cell door slammed shut. As he lay there, a strange sound caught his attention, the rhythmic crunching of someone nearby. Looking up, he saw another captive, a young man with wild hair, sitting calmly despite his bonds and chewing on a handful of weeds. The sight left him speechless, his eyes wide with disbelief at the absurdity of the situation. The stranger, noticing his shock, quickly defended his actions, insisting that the grass was perfectly edible, though this did little to ease the newcomer's growing concern for his cellmate's sanity. With a playful wink, the grass eater suggested that the boy should start calling him Big Bro to pass the time. The offer was met with an immediate and flat refusal. As the young healer realized the situation had just become significantly more bizarre, he begins by explaining a crucial detail that Kanado had overlooked. Legitimate adventurers always carry a specific badge as proof of their guild affiliation. As the weight of this information sinks in, Kanado slumps in defeat, finally realizing that the entire story about a dragon and the group's identity was a complete fabrication designed to lure him in. With a confident smirk, despite his bindings, the young man introduces himself as Jian, the captain of an adventurers guild known as the Iron Fangs. He speaks with an air of authority that seems at odds with his current predicament, his eyes gleaming with a mischievous energy. Because of this grand claim, the boy stares in utter disbelief, questioning how a supposed guild captain could end up bound and imprisoned so easily. Jian merely grins, seemingly unbothered by the irony of being a leader who fell into such a simple trap. The self-proclaimed captain explains that he had been on the trail of a notorious smuggling ring known as the Black Market. He describes how he was in the middle of systematically dismantling the group, even breaking their bones, when one of the criminals managed to slip away during the chaos. While in pursuit of the fugitive, his attention was suddenly diverted by a girl offering free food samples on the street. Unable to resist the temptation of a free meal, he stopped to indulge, a confession that leaves Kanado staring at him with a mixture of shock and pity. The treat turned out to be a calculated trap, heavily laced with a potent sleeping medicine that knocked him out instantly. He laughs off the blunder as if it were a hilarious joke, though he admits that the magical rope binding him is proving to be a significant and annoying obstacle. As he shifts his weight, the bindings groan with a metallic tension. He warns that this is no ordinary rope, but a magical device designed to drain the prisoner's mana. Furthermore, the more one struggles to loosen the grip, the tighter and more restrictive the bindings become. Upon hearing this, a spark of hope ignites in Kanado's eyes as he recalls the lessons his grandmother taught him. He realizes that the unique properties of sea-time magic might be the perfect counter to these mana-draining restraints, offering them a potential path to freedom. He stares blankly, processing the captain's question about the nature of his unique magic. Drawing a parallel between the magical bindings and a tensed muscle, he reasons that if sea-time magic can relax a human body, it might also be able to soothe the tension within the mana-draining device itself. With a look of intense focus, he prepares to channel his energy directly into the restraints, aiming to manually adjust the flow of mana that keeps them locked tight. He calls upon his power, invoking a technique of relaxation that causes the magical ropes to surge with light and begin to unravel under the sudden release of tension. As the bindings fall away in useless heaps, he stands liberated, much to the astonishment of his cellmate who cheers at the impossible feat. As he suggests they make a swift return to the safety of the town, the captain stretches his cramped limbs and prepares to handle the guards waiting outside. Meanwhile, unaware of the breach, the captors outside mock the idea of any prisoner escaping, boasting about the layers of complex magic woven into the restraints by multiple mages. Their laughter is cut short as the very wall of the hideout erupts outward in a violent shower of stone and dust, signaling a powerful and aggressive exit. He wears a confident smirk, his eyes sharp with the thrill of the breakout. Because of this sudden burst of strength, the guards are thrown into a panic, their voices rising in alarm as they realize their prize is slipping away. Stepping through the settling dust of the shattered wall, the captain assesses his own strength, noting that while he isn't yet at his peak, his current power is more than enough to handle the situation, much to the awe of his young companion. He then turns his gaze toward the horizon, eager to find the rest of the guild and show them how a true adventurer conducts himself in battle. Meanwhile, the captors watch in disbelief, unable to comprehend how a man whose mana should have been completely depleted could possibly stage such a violent escape. As the boy showers him with praise, the captain basks in the admiration, though a sudden, thunderous crash nearby suggests that his rampage may have had unintended consequences. From the shadows of the night, a massive wyvern descends, its wings silhouetted against the full moon as it lands amidst the debris. The creature looms over the two of them, its predatory eye fixed on the intruders as a low growl rumbles in its throat. The massive beast looms over them, its presence casting a shadow of pure dread across the rocky terrain. Faced with the impossible sight, both men can do nothing but let out a synchronized, blood-curdling scream of pure terror. It responds with a deafening roar that shakes the very foundations of the earth, sending clouds of dust and debris billowing into the air. As the creature prepares to strike, Kanado stammers in disbelief, his mind racing to understand how a legendary dragon could be in such a place. He is suddenly hoisted into the air as Jian grabs him, leaping clear of a devastating swipe that shatters the ground where they stood moments before. Kanado realizes with a jolt of horror that the bandits must have unwittingly built their hideout right next to a dragon's lair. Taking cover behind a jagged rock formation, the warrior catches his breath, acknowledging the grim reality that they are isolated with no hope of reinforcements. He determines that his only path forward is to slay the beast himself. His companion is baffled, reminding him that he had claimed to be nearly drained of mana, but Jian remains undeterred, placing his faith in his mastery of martial arts rather than raw magical power. He explains that he has meticulously adjusted what little mana remains and realigned his joints to ensure he can move with his full range of speed and power. With a focused expression, he prepares to face the dragon head-on. He moves with a blur of speed, his body feeling light as he demonstrates his prowess to the young boy. Despite the boy's apologies for his perceived inadequacy, the warrior offers a warm smile, praising the boy's magic as a reflection of a truly kind and caring soul. He gives his solemn word. He will protect both the boy and the town, urging him to find safety while he handles the danger. As he retreats, the boy's breath comes in ragged gasps, the weight of the warrior's words echoing in his mind. He can't shake the description of his magic as something inherently kind, a thought that seems to anchor him even as he moves away from the immediate peril. Stopping for a moment to catch his breath, he remains haunted by the encounter. The silence of the rocky terrain is broken only by his heavy respiration as he processes the warrior's unwavering confidence and the responsibility placed upon his own shoulders. Suddenly, the earth shatters as the wyvern lunges, its massive form a whirlwind of destruction. The warrior is a streak of motion, narrowly dodging the beast's claws as boulders are reduced to rubble in the wake of the creature's fury. Seeing the struggle from below, the boy claws his way up the jagged cliffside, his resolve hardening with every inch. He realizes that if the warrior is risking everything to save him, he cannot simply stand by. He must find a way to assist. Below him, the dragon's maw begins to glow with a terrifying, concentrated energy, preparing a devastating blast. Reaching the summit, he stands tall against the backdrop of the chaotic battle, looking down at the ancient predator. The wyvern pauses, its glowing eye fixing on the small figure perched above, sensing a shift in the flow of the confrontation. His gaze falls upon a specialized tool in his hand, a massage ball vibrating with an intense, contained mana. He finally understands the mechanics of the warrior's power. It isn't just brute force, but a sophisticated application of Isekai magic and flow boost designed to optimize the body's internal energy. This realization brings back the teachings of the burly man, who once explained over a simple meal that true mastery comes from more than just raw power. It is the art of adjusting and controlling mana, of setting the very flow of all energy into a harmonious motion. He lunges forward at the cliff's edge, pouring every ounce of his resolve into a single throw. With a desperate cry, he launches the small, mana-infused sphere toward the looming beast, the object whistling through the air as it closes the distance. As the projectile connects, a sudden, violent surge of energy erupts, propelling the sphere with unnatural speed. The impact is thunderous, catching the creature off guard as the force of the super acceleration takes hold, while he continues to scream in a mix of terror and effort. The massive wyvern recoils from the blow, its head snapping back as it loses its balance. Below, he clings precariously to the rocky face, watching as the beast's momentum is completely shattered by the small, unassuming tool. With the threat finally neutralized, the dragon spirals away into the abyss, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. He stands alongside his companion, both of them catching their breath as they watch the creature disappear from sight. His companion turns to him with wide, excited eyes, exclaiming that the power of Isekai is truly incredible. He, however, can only stare back in shock, his mind reeling at the sheer destructive potential of a technique he once thought was merely for healing. Crouching low as the adrenaline begins to fade, his heart hammers against his ribs with a frantic rhythm. He realizes with a shudder of dread that such a volatile force must never be applied to the patients at his clinic. The line between therapy and weaponry has become terrifyingly thin. The warrior approaches him with a grin, genuinely impressed by the display and eager to know the identity of his unexpected savior. He introduces himself as Kanado, still slightly dazed by the rapid turn of events and the praise being heaped upon him. When he explains that he is simply an ordinary practitioner who worked at a town clinic with his grandmother, the warrior is visibly stunned. It seems impossible to the fighter that such power could come from someone with such a humble, domestic background. He stood in contemplative silence as the weight of the offer hung in the air. Jin, having witnessed the young man's incredible power firsthand, formally invited him to leave his life at the clinic behind and join their guild as an adventurer. The proposal was sudden, leaving the healer visibly uncertain about such a drastic change in his path. He watched as the energetic captain sprang up to demonstrate his newfound vitality, crediting the healer's magic for his incredible flexibility. Startled by the sudden outburst and the captain's intense enthusiasm, the young man could only stammer a refusal, overwhelmed by the pressure of the moment. He continued to insist that he was nothing more than a simple practitioner of the healing arts, and that he was well aware of his own limitations. Despite the feat he had just performed against the wyvern, he couldn't see himself as a warrior, even as the captain's eyes sparkled with absolute conviction in his potential. He began to weigh the possibility, reflecting on the captain's words and the reality that he had, indeed, defeated a dragon. While the desire to help others as an adventurer was tempting, he worried about his responsibilities at the clinic and, most importantly, what his grandmother would think of him leaving. He sought counsel from his grandmother, who responded with a warm smile and a simple blessing. She told him to be careful out there, her calm acceptance clearing the path for him and turning his lingering uncertainty into a quiet, steady resolve. He heard her remind him that he was a man now, and that it didn't matter what had set things in motion. He should go out and give it a try. These words of encouragement were the final push he needed to embrace the unknown and step into his new role. He and his companion prepared for their departure, standing ready to leave the clinic behind. Lainey waved a cheerful goodbye to everyone, her excitement for the journey ahead contrasting with the quiet determination on the young healer's face as they officially joined the Iron Fangs. They moved toward the horizon as the captain reaffirmed his belief in the young man's future, promising to ensure he would never regret this choice. Looking ahead, the new adventurer vowed to do his absolute best, leaving his old life behind to face the challenges of a world that now saw him as much more than a simple clinic worker. Kanado, a practitioner of the healing arts, has set his sights on a new path, becoming an adventurer. He travels toward the royal capital alongside Jian, the boisterous captain of the Iron Fangs Guild, and Lainey, a young woman documenting their journey for a future autobiography. As they walk, the captain bluntly reminds the aspiring youth that he lacks the necessary certification to call himself a true adventurer. He emphasizes that only those bearing an official badge are permitted to take on work, proudly displaying the mark of his own rank upon his arm. While the young woman continues to scribble personal details in her notebook, the boy asks for the first step, learning that he must register with the association to earn his own badge. Their journey brings them to the eastern branch of the Adventurers Association, a peculiar structure shaped like a massive mushroom, where they are greeted by a staff member named Hibiki. She explains that the registration is a simple, routine process requiring only some paperwork and a single drop of blood, which the boy provides with a quick prick of his finger. To finalize the process, she introduces a magical assessment doll, a whimsical creature tasked with measuring his latent abilities and assigning a starting rank, typically the lowest tier of bronze. After a brief moment of evaluation, the doll delivers its verdict with a harsh insult, calling him a maggot and leaving him stunned as he recalls his promise to make his grandmother proud. He stands frozen as the small creature delivers its scathing verdict, declaring that his physical strength and mana capacity fall far below even the most basic standards. The doll's voice is cold, dismissing him as a mere maggot who has no place in this world. Seeing the confusion on Hibiki's face, the doll clarifies that if the boy still seeks official authorization, he must prove his worth through a trial. It begins to prepare itself, its small form vibrating with an impending challenge. Without a moment's hesitation, the young man shouts his acceptance, his eyes burning with a newfound resolve to meet whatever test lies ahead. He admits that he would much rather be pushed to his absolute limits than have things handed to him easily, a sentiment that leaves his companions questioning his sanity. Lainey and Hibiki exchange skeptical glances, wondering if his desire for hardship borders on the unusual. Because his registration is already tied to his blood sample, Hibiki explains that the only path forward is to satisfy the doll's demands. The creature barks out its orders, commanding him to head outside and use his magic to assist at least 10 people before the sun sets, prompting him to bolt toward the exit with the doll in tow. The ensuing hours are a blur of frantic effort and physical abuse, as the doll relentlessly strikes him while demanding to know the origin of his aspirations. Amidst the chaos of the stressful interview, he struggles to keep his composure under the creature's constant barrage. As the physical toll mounts, his mind drifts back to the small town where he and Lainey grew up, searching for the spark that first ignited his path. He recalls a time when powerful adventurers from a distant guild arrived to drive back monsters, later sharing their warmth and food with the humble townspeople. To his younger self, these figures seemed to belong to a completely different, more heroic world than his own. He remembers the warmth of that day, when a wandering adventurer used magic not for battle, but to heat soup for a crowd of hungry people. He carried this memory as a guiding light, a desire to help others that was later validated by Jian, who saw the true nature of his magic and encouraged him to embrace its kindness. Feeling the weight of those past encounters, he finds a new surge of determination, fully committed to the task at hand. He is interrupted by the small assessment doll, which remains unimpressed and urges him to hurry and change its cold judgment before the sun sets. Arriving in Yuba Town, he quickly scans the area and spots a man slumped over, clearly in distress and sweating profusely. The man groans, explaining that a carriage ride has left him severely nauseous and that he unfortunately forgot his usual medicine, leaving him helpless in the street. He is met with Kanado's immediate help as the young man reaches out, his hands glowing with a soft light. The relief is instantaneous, leaving the man stunned by how much better he feels, while Kanado explains that he simply corrected the imbalance within the man's nervous system. He stands with his companions as Lainey proudly explains the nature of his Setai magic, She describes how it can adjust the minute flow of mana within a person's body to alleviate everything from joint aches to nerve pain, showcasing a specialized form of healing that differs from standard restoration. Following her explanation, he continues his work on the burly man, whose back pain vanishes instantly. Nearby, Jian observes the process with a critical eye, noting that while his own mana is like a vast pool, the young healer's reserves are barely a cup's worth, yet he achieves incredible results. This efficiency stems from a unique methodology. Instead of relying on his own limited energy, he uses a tiny amount of his mana to seize control of and redirect the patient's own internal flow. With a look of intense focus, he prepares to make another adjustment, maximizing the impact of his meager power by manipulating the energy already present in others. The small assessment doll, serving as the conduit for this magic, begins to glow and vibrate with warmth. It realizes that such a feat, controlling another's mana with such a small output, requires a level of precision that should be nearly impossible for someone of his standing. Despite the success, the effort leaves him drained, and he collapses onto the cobblestones of the town square. He scans the area, but no other citizens seem to be in immediate distress, leaving him to wonder how he will meet the assessment's requirements with so few people in need of help. While he takes a moment to recover with a strange-flavored snack, Hibiki approaches with a stern reminder. She warns him that he must help at least one more person to satisfy the doll's conditions, emphasizing that this annual opportunity is too precious to waste through lack of initiative. She continues her cold evaluation, explaining that her duty is to fail those who are unsuited for the life of an adventurer. Because the assessment doll manifested a personality as critical as hers, she deems him dangerously unstable and not yet ready for the path ahead. Sitting quietly with the doll as the sun begins to dip, he reflects on his limited capabilities. Though he acknowledges his inexperience, he refuses to simply give up, even as the weight of the challenge and Hibiki's harsh words begin to press down on him. He refuses to yield, declaring his resolve to become an adventurer despite the setbacks. The small assessment doll observes his unwavering spirit, noting that his mental fortitude far exceeds the norm. Even as the heat from a nearby disturbance begins to rise, his determination only burns brighter, impressing the small creature. Suddenly, a violent explosion rocks the area as a nearby building is engulfed in roaring flames. Panic erupts among the townspeople, their cries of alarm filling the air as the inferno spreads rapidly through the structure, threatening everything in its path. Seeing the chaos, the captain of the Iron Fangs offers a confident smirk, deciding to leave the situation in the young man's hands. While his companion urgently calls for them to act, the captain remains unbothered, placing his full trust in the potential he sees before him. The young healer recalls the wisdom of his grandmother, remembering her lesson that mana does not only flow through living beings, but through nature itself. He scans the surroundings with newfound focus, searching for a source of water that might be hidden beneath the cobblestones. His eyes lock onto the ground as he identifies the precise trigger point where the groundwater converges. The flow of energy beneath the surface becomes clear to him, marking the exact spot needed to intervene and save the burning building. Without hesitation, he imbues his massage ball with a surge of mana and hurls it downward with incredible force. The small object becomes a conduit for his power, striking the earth with the intent to disrupt the natural flow below. Following the initial strike, he activates a burst of super acceleration, driving his fist into the cracked pavement. The impact shatters the stone, channeling his energy directly into the subterranean reservoir to force the water upward. The pressure transfer is instantaneous, causing a massive geyser of water to erupt from the ground and douse the burning building. The townspeople watch in awe as the sudden deluge tames the inferno, a testament to the young man's unconventional mastery of mana. He watched as the assessment doll rode the crest of the massive water column, the small creature letting out a joyful cry as it was propelled into the air by the sheer force of the geyser. Around him, the atmosphere shifted from terror to jubilation. His companions and the townspeople raised their hands in celebration, their faces lit with relief and awe at the sudden turn of events. The towering spray finally began to subside, leaving the once-burning buildings drenched and safe, while the onlookers could hardly believe their eyes, whispering in hushed tones about the boy who had single-handedly quelled the inferno. Exhausted from the effort, the young mage slumped to the ground, gasping for air as his friends rushed to his side. While they expressed their profound gratitude and relief that the danger had passed, the captain turned his attention to the association official, eager to hear the final verdict on how the boy had performed during this unexpected trial. A heavy silence fell as the official processed the results, eventually confirming that the necessary conditions had been met despite the unconventional circumstances. With a final decisive stamp, the name Kanado was officially recorded in the guild's ledgers. With a professional yet warm smile, she presented him with his new credentials, announcing to the small group that his adventure registration was now complete. She looked him in the eye and declared that he was now officially a member of their ranks, a moment of formal recognition that felt heavy with significance. He clutched the new badge to his chest, his eyes sparkling with pure joy as his friends erupted into cheers behind him, celebrating his transition into the ranks of true adventurers. Looking down at the metallic token in his hands, he felt a surge of pride, realizing that he had finally achieved his goal of becoming one of them. However, as he studied the badge more closely, a new curiosity took hold. He began to wonder about the specific color of the medal and what rank it truly signified within the hierarchy of the guild. He stood in stunned silence as the registrar delivered the results of his comprehensive assessment. Hibiki, peering intently at the records, announced that his rank was designated as colorless, a classification she had never encountered before. She explained with a mix of awe and disbelief that he was the first individual in history to be ranked below the bronze tier, a revelation that left both him and his companion wide-eyed with shock. Despite the unprecedented and lowly rank, the registrar offered him a warm smile of encouragement, promising to cheer for his future success. He responded with a firm, determined vow, his spirit undeterred by the strange classification. With their immediate objective in the village successfully completed, the group prepared to depart for the capital, the bustling heart of the kingdom and the headquarters of the Iron Fangs Adventurers Guild, where a new chapter of their journey await. The young traveler and his companion finally arrive at the gates of Assam, his eyes wide with wonder as the scale of the city unfolds before them. He can't help but let out a gasp of amazement at the sheer size and bustle of the place. The capital city of the Rohuna kingdom stretches out in a grand display of stone architecture and multi-story buildings, a testament to the prosperity of the realm. People move through the streets like ants in a well-ordered colony, each with a destination and a purpose. As they navigate the thoroughfares, they witness the seamless integration of magic into daily life. Kinato points out the various magical devices available to the public and marvels at a figure soaring through the sky on a paper-like craft, realizing that in this capital, the extraordinary is merely ordinary. He turns to Liney, his face beaming with excitement as he asks if she doesn't find the sheer scale of the big city absolutely incredible. His companion, however, is having a very different reaction. She is completely overwhelmed by the sensory overload of the commercial district. While Kinato notes her usual composure, she's actually panicking internally, her mind racing between the lottery stands and the endless shops, unsure of where to spend her attention first. Eventually, they reach a grand, ornate building that stands out even among the capital's impressive structures. With a triumphant shout, Kinato announces that they have finally arrived at his guild, the place he calls home. She immediately shifts her focus to the potential for profit, her eyes turning into symbols of greed as she declares her intent to work tirelessly and amass a fortune. Their shared enthusiasm is palpable, but it is suddenly interrupted by a massive shadow looming over them from above. With a thunderous crash that sends dust and debris flying, a familiar, energetic figure lands right behind them. The impact of his arrival startles the pair, signaling that their quiet return to the guild is over before it even began. He laughs heartily, dismissing his explosive arrival as nothing more than a decoy sign. Kinato, however, is far from amused, demanding to know the purpose of such a stunt. With a carefree grin, the man offers a bit of unsolicited wisdom. When faced with the incomprehensible, the only logical response is to smile. Leading them toward the building, he casually remarks that the impressive exterior is merely a facade designed to lure in unsuspecting clients. This revelation strikes Kinato as remarkably underhanded, especially for a guild as renowned as the Iron Fangs. While he urges them forward, Liney is filled with anticipation, recognizing this as the moment they have been working toward. As she follows, she realizes with a sigh that her role might involve maintaining that very facade as the guild's new poster girl. As she moves ahead, he steps through the threshold, feeling a surge of determination. Kinato realizes that this is the true beginning of his journey, the place where his life as an adventurer will finally take root. His moment of reflection is shattered when a massive, muscular man suddenly lunges from the shadows, slamming the guild leader into the floor with a thunderous crash. The attacker roars with fury, demanding to know where his captain has been slacking off all this time. Ignoring the man he just pinned to the ground, the newcomer stands tall, revealing himself to be Aljan, the vice-captain of the Iron Fangs. With a boisterous and slightly intimidating grin, he welcomes the newcomers, boasting that no job is too dirty for their guild to handle, whether it involves slaying monsters or finding missing items. He then reveals that he also manages the front desk, a dual role that leaves Kinato and Liney speechless. Beneath him, the captain can only offer a weak, pained introduction as he remains pinned under the weight of his subordinate. His welcoming demeanor vanishes instantly when he realizes that the two strangers are not, in fact, paying clients. He bellows at them, his face contorted in a mix of confusion and rage, demanding to know who they are and why they have entered his guild without business. Jian presents the newcomers with a flourish, claiming his absence was actually a strategic recruiting mission for the Iron Fangs. Aljin, however, remains unimpressed by the explanation, questioning the validity of these supposed new recruits. He responds to the excuse with a bone-shattering slam, cratering the floor with Jian's body. Despite the violence of the impact, the vice captain merely tells him to stop making excuses for his slacking. Watching the brutal exchange, Kanado can't help but wonder about Jian's actual age. The two veterans quickly dismiss the concern, laughing as they explain they've been companions since their days in a different guild, and this is simply how they've always fought. The vice captain turns his attention to the fresh recruits, while Liney bluntly observes that the guild's monopoly on local missions seems rather unethical and scummy. Their conversation is interrupted by the arrival of Kaminaji, a striking woman who immediately voices her disapproval. She argues that admitting a colorless rank amateur like Kanado will only tarnish the Iron Fang's reputation, and she decides to take matters in her own hands to knock some sense into him. She suddenly lunges forward, her movement a blur as she warns the rookie that he has made a mistake by coming here, and that it's time he learned his place. The attack is swift and overwhelming, leaving the onlookers stunned as she demonstrates the vast gap in their abilities with a display of incredible speed. Instead of being intimidated, the young man gazes up at her with wide-eyed wonder, completely captivated by her presence. He boldly asks if he might call her princess from this day forward, leaving both his attacker and Jian utterly speechless. He watched in bewilderment as Jian explained the source of the current absurdity. It seemed Kaminaji was a devoted fan of a classic tale involving a knight and a princess, and in her zeal to break a kingdom's curse, she had swept Liney into her elaborate roleplay. Surprisingly, the young girl took to the new dynamic with ease. Blushing with delight, she admitted that being addressed as "Your Highness" was perfectly acceptable, showing a remarkable ability to adapt to the guild's eccentricities. As the captain observed this, he turned to the boy and asked for his honest impression of the group. Overwhelmed by the sheer intensity of the personalities around him, the youth confessed his doubts about being able to keep pace with such a unique collection of individuals. Recognizing the need for structure, Jian announced that it was time to assign mentors to the new recruits. The burly vice captain, Aljin, eagerly volunteered to take charge of the girls' education regarding guild operations, which meant the captain himself would be taking the boy under his wing. However, the prospect of training was immediately overshadowed by the terrifying presence of the dark-haired woman nearby. While the boy trembled, certain she intended to kill him, Jian encouraged him to be brave and simply share the deep-seated motivations that drove him to become an adventurer. The captain continued, acknowledging that while his members were certainly quirky, they possessed the mental fortitude required to overcome any obstacle. He spoke with pride of the Iron Fang's legacy as a guild that never yields, a sentiment that resonated deeply with the boy's own inner resolve. Inspired by these words, the youth found his voice and shouted his declaration to the room. He explained that he had come to this guild specifically to realize his dream of becoming an adventurer who shines with true strength, one who is kind and capable of supporting countless people. Moved by this display of spirit, Jian decided there was no better time to start and immediately assigned the boy and the intimidating woman to a mission together. Though a cold sweat broke out on his face, the young adventurer accepted the challenge, ready to prove his worth. The scene shifts to the outskirts of Evkiv, a village south of the guild's location. The surrounding area has become a dangerous territory, overrun by small monsters that have effectively trapped the villagers inside, cutting off their food supply. He stands before Jian, who lays out the harsh reality. If the boy proves to be a colorless burden, he will be expelled from the Iron Fangs immediately. Despite the threat, the recruit remains undeterred, eagerly placing his trust in his new mentor. Kaminaji, however, is far from pleased, viewing the novice as nothing more than a hindrance. Jian dismisses her concerns, leaving the boy's ultimate fate entirely in her hands. The young recruit is left reeling by the suddenness of it all, protesting that he only arrived that very day. His panic is met with a chilling, intrigued smile from Kaminaji, who silently accepts the task of deciding his future. Watching from a distance, Liney expresses her concern for her friend, who seems to be spiraling into despair. Aljin remains calm, suggesting that Jian has a deeper understanding of the boy's potential than they realize. Indeed, the captain knows exactly what he is doing, believing that the boy's true strength only manifests when he is pushed to his absolute limit. The formal request from the mayor of Evkiv confirms the gravity of the situation, calling for adventurers to clear the monsters that have besieged their home. On the trade route to the village, the mission begins in earnest as they encounter a swarm of low-level slimes. The creatures are small but aggressive, lunging at the pair with gnashing teeth. She makes short work of the monsters, her ice magic shattering them into frozen shards with effortless grace. Turning to her struggling student, she issues a cold challenge. The only way for him to prove his worth is to slay more monsters than she does before the mission is over. She walks away with cold indifference, remarking that such a task is surely impossible for someone colorless like him. Left behind, he can only gape in shock as a swarm of small, jagged-toothed monsters begins to close in, their presence marked by a series of unsettling rustles. He remains undeterred even as the veteran adventurer glances back, muttering a single, dismissive word about his apparent helplessness. Clutching a simple massage ball, he reveals that the object is actually brimming with his own mana, his expression shifting from panic to a sudden, sharp focus. With a shout of super acceleration, the young man launches the projectile, which tears through the air like a comet and shatters the monsters in an instant. Standing amidst the aftermath, he declares his name and his unique discipline, Sea-Time Magic, before bowing and begging her to share her knowledge, leaving her visibly stunned by the unexpected display of power. Minato scans the village square, searching for his companion while clutching the specialized massage ball Jian had given him. He reflects on the rigorous practice he endured on the road to Assam, knowing he cannot afford to make a mistake now that the mission has truly begun. Nearby, Kaminaji moves with lethal grace, her blade carving through the air and shattering the crystalline structures surrounding her. She remains a blur of focused intensity, her hands steady on the hilt of her katana as she prepares for the next strike. Minato watches her in awe, momentarily distracted by her sheer skill and the speed of her movements. Snapping back to the task at hand, he unleashes his own technique, sending the massage balls hurtling through the air with incredible speed. The projectiles strike with precision, tearing through the ranks of the encroaching monsters in a display of super-accelerated force. The creatures dissolve into viscous puddles on the cobblestones, seemingly defeated by the barrage. However, the victory feels hollow as a sense of unease lingers in the air, suggesting the threat is far from over. Suddenly, a new wave of more ferocious, toothy monsters leaps from the shadows, catching him completely unprepared. Their jagged maws snap at the air as they lunge toward him with predatory intent. Before he can react, a firm hand grips his collar, hauling him backward as a voice commands the rookie to move aside. The sudden intervention leaves him startled, his eyes wide as he is pulled away from the immediate danger. He is tossed aside as the woman leaps into the fray, her blade flashing with lethal precision. She moves with a grace that defies the chaos, her focus entirely on the encroaching swarm as she prepares a devastating counterattack. Following her swift movement, a sudden, frigid blast erupts from the center of the battlefield. Shards of ice and frozen slime fragments fly everywhere as she unleashes a powerful technique that halts the monsters in their tracks, encasing the entire area in a crystalline frost. Gasping for breath, the young man watches the aftermath from the ground, his voice trembling as he calls out her name in disbelief. The sheer scale of her power leaves him momentarily stunned, his eyes wide as he realizes the gap in their abilities. She stands calmly amidst the crystalline remains, explaining that these creatures are fluid-like entities that will continue to divide and multiply unless their core is neutralized. Without a specific strategy to freeze them or destroy the main body, brute force is merely a temporary solution against an endless tide. Looking down at him, she notes that while freezing them is effective, such a feat is far beyond the capabilities of someone without a specialized color. She warns that they will only continue to multiply unless he learns to fight with a concrete plan, emphasizing the harsh reality of his current limitations. Instead of being discouraged, his face lights up with genuine gratitude, a deep blush creeping across his cheeks as he thanks her for the invaluable lesson. His enthusiasm is unexpected and intense, catching the seasoned warrior off guard with his earnest desire to learn. This reaction catches her off guard. She hadn't intended to insult him, but she certainly didn't expect him to respond with such wide-eyed wonder. While she processes this strange turn of events, he immediately begins scribbling the new information into his notebook, his eyes sparkling with newfound determination. Watching him, she is reminded of many others who once shared that same spark of hope before the harsh realities of adventuring broke their spirits. One by one, they had hit their limits and vanished, leaving her to wonder if this young man and his companion will eventually succumb to the same walls that claimed so many before them. She turns her back on the young man, her thoughts lingering on the limitations of those without a specialized affinity. She wonders how long his resolve will hold before the harsh reality of this world breaks him. Behind her, he cries out in alarm, his voice strained with sudden urgency. The source of his panic becomes clear as a terrified child sprints through the ruins, pursued by a massive, multi-eyed slime that looms over him like a nightmare. The boy's desperate pleas for help echo off the stone walls as the creature's jagged maw snaps at his heels. Reacting instantly, the warrior woman braces herself, but the sheer force of the situation forces a pained grunt from her lips. Seeing her struggle, the young man shouts her name in terror, but she sharply commands him to stay back, her eyes narrowing as she prepares to face the threat despite the obvious strain. Instead of retreating, he lunges forward, a flash of light erupting as he creates a momentary diversion to draw the monster's attention away from the child. The massive slime recoils, its gelatinous form quivering under the sudden interference. Seizing the opening, he scoops the trembling boy into his arms and bolts, realizing that a direct confrontation is currently impossible. He grunts that they must retreat for the time being, his feet pounding against the pavement as he puts distance between them and the encroaching horde. Behind them, the slimes continue their mindless advance, their bodies bouncing and shifting as they reclaim the empty street. The immediate danger passes as the survivors vanish into the safety of the nearby alleyways. Once they reach a moment of relative safety, he gently sets the child down and asks if he is unharmed. The boy, still shaken, explains through tears that his mother is ill and he had only ventured out because he desperately wanted to find food for her, despite her warnings to stay hidden. Their conversation is interrupted by the arrival of the association official, who looks upon the scene with a mixture of concern and sternness. She reminds them that evacuation orders were issued for a reason and demands to know why they are still within the danger zone, prompting a stuttered apology from the frightened child. She stands by as Kanado attempts to soothe the boy's fears, assuring the child that the monsters will be dealt with before they can reach the village. To bolster the boy's spirits, he points toward the silent warrior, presenting her as the formidable adventurer who will ensure their safety. She watches as he then turns his critical eye toward the warrior herself, boldly claiming that her current use of magic is unsustainable. He compares her power to a self-inflicted explosion that ravages her body, a point he makes with unwavering conviction. He elaborates on the mismatch between her internal energy and her weapon, suggesting this discord is why she feels unable to save the village on her own. Despite her stunned silence, he offers his own magic as a stabilizing force, determined to help her regain control. She is taken aback when his composure breaks for a moment as he shouts his true motivation, confessing that he simply cannot bear to see her endure any more pain. The weight of his concern is etched clearly across his face, momentarily silencing the group as he admits he doesn't want to see her get hurt anymore. She finally confesses the depth of her struggle, revealing that her blade has remained stuck in its scabbard ever since a past incident. While she seems to have accepted this limitation as permanent, the news clearly rattles him. He quickly deduces a physical cause for her magical blockage, theorizing that she suffers from an extreme sensitivity to cold. He explains that because mana is intrinsically tied to one's physical state, her poor circulation is causing her energy to backfire, dangerously lowering her body temperature. She considers this, realizing that her perpetual coldness was a symptom of a much larger problem. He remains optimistic, however, asserting that if they can fix her circulation and steady her mana, she will finally be able to draw her katana once more. She and the others find their moment of clarity shattered when the smaller slimes fuse into a massive, multi-eyed behemoth that looms over the ruins. Recognizing the escalating danger, he calls out for the warrior to execute their new strategy before the creature can strike. She listens as he explains the risks of his methods. He warns that applying mana directly to a patient's body is a heavy burden, but in this moment, the stakes are as high as any battlefield. He resolves to put his faith in her, knowing that without trust, their efforts are meaningless. Proclaiming his pride as an adventurer of the Iron Fangs, he unleashes his magic, a surge of energy designed to boost her internal flow. His magic takes hold, and she feels the sensation wash over her like a steaming bath after an exhausting day, a warmth so intense it seems to melt the very ice in her veins. She can feel his power intertwining with her own mana and blood. She is enveloped in a sudden, intense heat as he triggers a massive surge in her circulation. Steam billows around her, as the cold that had paralyzed her limbs is forcibly driven out by the sudden, artificial fever. She remains steady even as the monstrous fusion of slimes lunges forward with a predatory roar, terrifying the young boy nearby. Her fingers finally find the strength to grip the cold steel of her hilt. She draws her blade in a flash of silver, the steel singing as it cleaves through the air and the gelatinous mass of the monster. With the threat neutralized, she turns back with a confident smirk, assuring her companion that she is finally warm enough to fight. The mission to clear the slimes near Evkiv village is officially concluded after a final sweep of the surrounding area confirms the threat has been neutralized. Standing before the association representative, the two companions receive formal confirmation of their success, though the weight of the task still lingers in their expressions. He erupts in a cheer of gratitude, his relief palpable as the official commends their hard work and marks the end of this particular trial. While she notes the improved fluidity of her movements and her renewed bond with her blade, he frets over his performance, fearing he hasn't done enough to prove his worth to his peers. She watches him, realizing that his unique magic will be essential to her from now on, even as she struggles with a strange, fluttering sensation in her chest that she can't quite explain. He suddenly vows to grow stronger so he can remain at her side, a declaration that causes her heart to race before he retreats into his own thoughts about his favorite heroic chronicles. Her eyes widen as she recognizes his words as a famous line from a romantic epic, where a knight pledges himself to a princess, leaving her stunned by the implication. She is left utterly flustered when he admits he hasn't even read the book, realizing he spoke those words from the heart, just as a young boy from the village runs toward them to interrupt the moment. He is joined by the rest of the villagers, who crowd around the two adventurers with tears of gratitude in their eyes. They wonder aloud how they could ever repay such a debt, but Kanado simply offers a humble smile. He insists that no thanks are necessary, claiming he is merely acting as their knight, a statement that leaves Kaminaji wide-eyed and speechless. As she looks upon the humble crowd, a strange transformation occurs in her mind's eye. Every woman in the village suddenly appears radiant and regal, as if they were all princesses from the very stories she has studied so intently. She finds herself questioning why her perception has shifted so drastically, unable to reconcile the simple reality with the fairy tale filter now clouding her vision. This sudden shift triggers a deep internal conflict, as she realizes her entire sense of self was built upon the stoic identity of a knight. Having spent countless nights immersed in the world of romantic epics, she now feels the foundations of her identity crumbling. The lines between the stories she read and the life she is living have blurred, leaving her terrified that she no longer knows who she truly is. Meanwhile, he remains blissfully unaware of her inner turmoil, his focus entirely on the well-being of the people. With a gentle expression, he reiterates that his only concern was ensuring the safety of the village. Kaminaji watches him, her heart racing as she struggles to process how a few simple words and gestures could carry more weight than the thousands of pages she has read. Her instincts scream a single truth, that the man standing before her is a true knight in every sense of the word. This realization brings a surge of unfamiliar emotions, a sense of personal growth that both excites and unnerves her. Determined to find clarity, she decides that she must return to the beginning and reread her entire collection of chronicles to find a new interpretation for these feelings. While she stands lost in thought, he is nearly tackled by the young boy, who clings to him in a final display of affection. Watching the genuine bond between the hero and the rescued, Kaminaji begins to soften her stance. She muses to herself that perhaps allowing herself to identify with the feelings of a princess in these stories might not be such a terrible thing after all. Shortly thereafter, the pair makes their way back to the familiar halls of the association. He pushes open the doors with a boisterous shout, announcing their return to anyone within earshot. Beside him, Kaminaji has regained her composure, though the events of the day clearly still weigh on her mind as they step back into their professional lives. Their arrival is met not with a quiet welcome, but with a scene of utter absurdity that leaves him gaping in confusion. Hibiki and a colleague are engaged in a grueling, bizarre training regimen, pushing their bodies to the limit while shouting about the nature of beauty and muscle. The sight is so far removed from the romantic tension of the village that the young adventurer can only stare, wondering what kind of madness has taken hold of the office in their absence. He returns to the association alongside Kaminaji, met immediately by Jian's boisterous greeting. The captain is eager to hear how their first mission went, welcoming them back with open arms while the rest of the staff continues their chaotic activities in the background. Relieved to see his friend unharmed, the captain expresses his gratitude for their safe return. Amidst the chatter, Kaminaji steps forward, her expression uncharacteristically soft as she quietly announces that she has finally accepted him. This acceptance takes a dramatic turn when she boldly declares him to be her knight. The proclamation leaves him utterly speechless, while the onlookers can only stare in stunned silence at the sudden shift in their dynamic. The change in her demeanor is jarring. She begins to blush furiously, demanding to be worshipped and treated with the reverence due to a princess. Watching from the sidelines, the others are baffled by this new side of her, with some wondering if a hidden part of her personality has been unlocked, while Hibiki considers seeking outside counsel. Looking down with a rare vulnerability, she confesses her ignorance regarding such matters. She asks him, with a hint of desperation in her eyes, if he could teach her how to be truly cute, admitting that the concept of being a princess is entirely foreign to her. As the men reflect on the sheer unpredictability of a woman's heart, Jian commends him for managing to provoke such a strong reaction from her. Their conversation is interrupted by Liney, who sweeps in to embrace the flustered girl, excitedly announcing the formation of a new girl squad. Turning back to the young man, the captain offers a sincere word of praise for his performance on the field. He acknowledges the success of the first mission, offering a warm smile that eases some of the tension from the day's strange events. However, the captain soon reveals a mischievous truth. He never had any intention of following through on his threat to expel him. He admits he would have simply kept assigning missions until the two found common ground, leaving the young recruit reeling at the realization that his position was never truly in jeopardy. He accepts the warm welcome into the Iron Fangs, shaking hands with Jian as he expresses his genuine excitement to finally be part of the group. He watches in surprise as Jian is suddenly shoved aside by a passerby, the moment interrupted by an aggressive shout that echoes through the street. The source of the noise is a heated confrontation between two rival groups, each claiming the surrounding neighborhood as their own territory and accusing the other of breaking a prior agreement regarding specific buildings, with neither side willing to back down. Tensions boil over in the busy streets of the capital as the men prepare to settle their dispute with violence, while nearby bystanders remark on the chaotic nature of the city's diverse and often volatile population, noting that such conflicts are common here. Watching the brewing brawl from a distance, a man with glasses sighs in frustration, lamenting how quickly things fall into disorder the moment he leaves for a few days. He tells his companion, a young woman named Juna who is struggling under the weight of an enormous backpack, to stay back while she frets over how embarrassing it is to be seen in such a state. Stepping into the fray, he demands to know how many times he has to tell them not to fight in public, his voice cutting through the noise of the impending riot. With a stern, authoritative gaze, he warns the troublemakers that he will not tolerate them causing problems for the neighbors or bringing shame upon the reputation of the Iron Fangs. He was met with cheers of relief as the men recognized him, but the warmth was short-lived. With a gaze that could freeze blood, he issued a chilling warning. They would either fall in line immediately, or he would personally ensure none of them drew another breath. The threat hung heavy in the air as he stood motionless between the two rival factions, his presence alone forcing a tense silence upon the cobblestone street. He roared an order for them to settle their differences through the humble task of trash duty, demanding they learn to cooperate. The men immediately began bickering, each side accusing the other of encroaching on their designated cleaning turf. Amidst the chaos, his sharp eyes drifted toward the two newcomers standing nearby, questioning their identity. The man adjusted his glasses and introduced himself as Talius, a seasoned adventurer of the Iron Fangs and the first apprentice to Jian himself. His demeanor shifted from terrifying to boisterous as he slapped a hand on the boy's shoulder, apologizing for the earlier display of aggression and explaining that the girl hiding behind them was simply overwhelmed by shyness. She remained tucked away behind her massive pack, trembling and pleading not to be looked at. Despite her efforts to vanish, Talius noted that her height made her impossible to miss, even as she tried to shrink away from the world. Jian is overcome with emotion, tears streaming down his face as he listens to the tale of Kanato's grandmother. He insists that the boy must make it a point to visit her frequently, his voice thick with sentiment as he praises the lady's character. After the emotional outburst, the group settles into their seats on a train bound for their next objective. While Jian continues to snack and boast about his ruggedness in the face of the elements, Talius begins to outline the details of their upcoming task. He explains that their client has commissioned them to locate a specific individual, a magical device engineer known as Ibis. Juna listens intently as the mission's parameters are laid out, her expression serious as she absorbs the information. As the briefing continues, the young recruit remains focused on his meal, his cheeks bulging as he tries to process both the food and the new information. He seems more interested in the donuts than the complexities of his search for Ibis. He finds himself being force-fed as Juna shoves another donut into his mouth, explaining that they were simply too delicious not to share. This earns a loud, indignant shout from Jian, who is baffled by her sudden motherly behavior toward the boy. This display of affection leaves her feeling quite embarrassed, admitting that looking at Kanato seems to trigger an unexpected maternal instinct. Talius tries to capitalize on the moment by asking for a snack of his own, but she quickly shuts him down. He then turns his attention back to Kanato, sensing the boy's underlying anxiety about the mission ahead. He counsels him to stop dwelling on the unknowns of the future and instead remember the hurdles he has already cleared to get this far. Pointing to the uniform Kanato now wears, he declares it a symbol of his hard-earned success and tells him to carry himself with pride. The encouragement hits home, and the young warrior responds with a bright, determined smile, ready to face whatever comes next. He reflects on his journey as the train speeds toward their destination. Kanato steels his resolve, vowing not to back down now that he's finally an adventurer. He dreams of using his magic to help others, even as Jian boisterously demands to be called boss, a request Kanato flatly ignores. He and his companions arrive at Kisalani, a bustling city northwest of the capital famous for its exquisite crystal craftsmanship. Nestled at the foot of a specialized mine, The town is a hub for artisans who make their living from the Earth's treasures, and the group takes in the unique atmosphere of the mountain settlement. As they begin their search, the officer rallies the team, urging them to start questioning the locals about the elusive ibis. Their mission is suddenly interrupted by a frantic cry to catch someone, followed by a blur of movement as a young girl leaps recklessly over their heads. The girl's acrobatic escape ends in a clumsy collision, sending her tumbling into the group with a startled cry. She quickly offers a frantic apology, but the surrounding townsfolk are far from forgiving, shouting for her to stop her dangerous antics and quit pretending to be the legendary ibis. Despite the hostility, she stands her ground, insisting that her mentor's only goal is to improve everyone's lives through the power of magical devices. She pleads with the crowd, trying to convince them that her inventions are perfectly safe, even as she bounces nervously under their judgmental glares. Her pleas fall on deaf ears as the villagers continue their verbal assault, citing the various ways her experiments have inconvenienced them. One man laments the hours spent on his hair, now ruined by her latest mishap, while others accuse her of putting the entire town at risk rather than enriching it. Determined to prove her worth, the young inventor rummages through her massive pack and produces a spherical contraption she calls the Gargantuan No. 1. She boldly proclaims that this magical device will solve the town's problems by sucking up every bit of trash in sight, ignoring the skeptical looks from the crowd. Her invention roars to life with unexpected violence, creating a powerful vacuum that begins to pull in everything, not just trash but laundry, signs, and even the townspeople themselves. Amidst the growing chaos, Talius watches the disastrous display, realizing with a grim certainty that they have found exactly who they were looking for. He watches in disbelief as the girl flees the scene, her voice trailing off as she promises to return with a magical device capable of making repairs. Because of the malfunctioning machine's relentless pull, he is suddenly hoisted into the air, screaming in terror as the vacuum force drags him toward its churning core. Once the chaos finally subsides, he lies sprawled on the pavement, disheveled and dazed. Juna leans over him, her attention caught by a strange mark on his arm, while Kinato fumes nearby, lamenting the state of his hair and the wreckage left in the town square. The girl returns shortly after, bowing deeply and introducing herself as Elsie while offering a profuse apology. The surrounding townspeople are far from forgiving, shouting over one another to demand compensation for the damages and a formal apology for the constant trouble. Kinato observes the scene with a critical eye, noting that while the master inventor Ibis is undeniably talented, her reputation among the locals has been thoroughly soured by these recurring disasters. As she explains the cycle of her life, Elsie describes how she creates new devices only for them to fail, forcing her to retreat to her workshop deep within the mines until she can emerge with a new invention. Jian listens to the explanation, finding the repetitive nature of her failures more annoying than impressive. While she continues her story, Kinato and Jian discuss the timing of her arrival, noting that she appeared and began causing trouble around the same time Ibis vanished from public view. Despite the town's growing resentment toward the master inventor, Elsie remains the only one who speaks of her with genuine affection. With a look of quiet, unwavering determination, she insists that Ibis is not a bad person, making a solemn promise to the group that there is more to the inventor than the chaos suggests. She admits that for now, all she seems to do is cause messes, but her eyes light up as she shares her ultimate dream, to one day create magical devices that bring happiness to everyone. She laughs heartily alongside Jian, her eyes bright with a newfound sense of purpose as she declares her intention to spread joy through her work. Observing her gear, Kinato asks if her specialized footwear was another of Ibis's creations, leading her to explain that they were a personal gift designed for her comfort. He smiles warmly, realizing that despite the town's reputation, the inventor must have been a deeply compassionate soul to care so much for her apprentice. While Talius grumbles about the state of his hair, the rest of the group enthusiastically pledges their support, vowing to help her find her missing mentor no matter the cost. Overwhelmed by their kindness, she offers a heartfelt thanks, her face lighting up with a genuine, joyful expression. Soon after, the party arrives at the entrance of the Kisalani mines, a breathtaking subterranean expanse known as the Crystal Forest, where jagged gems sprout from the earth like trees. As they venture deeper into the shimmering cavern, Kanato's excitement grows, even as they discuss the thick fog that guards the path to the hidden workshop. When questioned about her true motives, she admits a darker fear. Ibis had been unwell before her disappearance, and she dreads that something terrible has befallen her. They had barely entered the depths of the Kisalani mines when the silence was shattered by the arrival of other adventurers. Before they could even exchange greetings, a massive suit of animated armor lunged from a mist, forcing Kinato to dive and shield Elsie from the heavy blow. He managed to keep her safe, but the path forward was now blocked by these mechanical sentinels. The newcomers, members of the Iron Fangs, stepped forward with practiced ease, Talius, adjusting his glasses with a smirk, told the group to sit back and witness how professionals handled such threats. Beside him, his partner braced herself behind a massive, ornate shield, her expression focused and ready for the skirmish. He was surprised when the young man reached out, placing his hands on the backs of the two adventurers to channel his unique Setai magic. Kinato insisted on providing support, explaining that he could at least help them out a little, his eyes glowing with the effort of weaving his life force energy into their own. With a focused shout, he activated a flow boost, causing a visible aura of power to erupt around the Iron Fangs. The effect was instantaneous. Talius gasped as his limbs felt impossibly light, and the shield-bearer let out a startled cry as she felt a surge of raw strength. The young mage assured them that their movements would be swifter now, his confidence matching their own as he took up a defensive position behind them. Empowered by the magical enhancement, the duo tore into the animated armors with devastating speed. Talius's blade became a blur of silver, carving through the metal shells as if they were parchment, while his partner delivered a thunderous shield bash that sent another construct reeling back into the shadows. He laughed in triumph, thoroughly impressed by the unexpected potency of the boy's magic. As the last of the mechanical guardians fell, the swordsman declared that they were the Iron Fangs, and with such a powerful boost, no enemy in the mines could stand against them. A tall warrior with a distinctive shield emblem on her back sighs at the delay, her companion's childish request to keep a trophy earning a sharp rebuke. The delay is a nuisance, threatening to throw their entire schedule into disarray as they move through the ruins. Nearby, the trio of Talius, Kinato, and Juna stand amidst the rocky debris, catching their breath after the sudden skirmish. Talius adjusts his glasses, his expression one of analytical calm despite the recent exertion, while Kinato looks on with a mix of relief and exhaustion. He observes that the animated suit of armor was dispatched with a single, decisive blow, a testament to the overwhelming efficacy of their combined magic. Juna gazes at her hands, still feeling the residual hum of the power they just unleashed, marveling at how easily the threat was neutralized. Their success draws exuberant praise from Elsie, who bounces with excitement at how easily they handled the threat. Talius, ever the showman, strikes a confident pose and boasts about his agility, while Kinato shrinks back, visibly flustered by the sudden spotlight and Elsie's sparkling admiration. He tries to downplay his contribution, his face flushing deep red as he stammers a humble response. Talius, however, is quick to give credit where it's due, acknowledging that their magic felt significantly more potent than usual, all thanks to the support Kinato provided during the heat of battle. This sentiment is echoed by Juna, who notes that her very body feels lighter and more responsive under his influence. They begin to realize that their synergy is far greater than the sum of its parts, potentially forming a truly formidable team, much to Kinato's continued bashfulness as he tries to process their words. But the moment of triumph is short-lived as a mechanical grinding sound echoes through the clearing. To their collective horror, the fallen suits of armor begin to pull themselves back together, rising once more to continue the fight they thought was over. He watched in awe as a sudden, violent impact shattered the air, sending debris flying in a thunderous boom. His gaze fixed on the woman responsible for the strike as she adjusted her glasses with a smirk, mocking the others for neglecting their duties while she handled the threat. Beside her, a young warrior erupted into motion, his body crackling with raw energy as he lunged forward to finish what she started. He was a familiar face, and Kinato recognized the pair immediately as the energetic youth shouted about earning extra hero points for his performance. He stood stunned as they identified themselves as members of the Seraph Wings, the most elite guild in the business, leaving Talius and the others shocked by their arrival. The duo formally introduced themselves with practiced grace, even offering business cards to show they take their professional duties with the utmost pride. Their professional display only irritated Talius, who dismissively questioned what their friendship club was doing there, prompting an apology for the lack of cards to return. He found his protest silenced in a mere 5 seconds as she asserted her dominance, leaving him fuming and demanding a one-on-one duel to reclaim his honor. He is still caught in a heated exchange with the newcomers, but Kinato's attention shifts to the business card in his hand. Turning to Juna, he asks for clarification on what exactly the deal is with this Seraph Wings group as the shouting match continues behind them. She begins to explain the geopolitical landscape of their profession, noting that while many guilds exist throughout the kingdom, the Seraph Wings stand at the absolute pinnacle as the largest and most influential organization. Continuing her explanation, she points out that most guilds are careful to avoid operating in the same cities as the Seraph Wings to prevent their contracts from being poached. However, their own guild is headquartered right in the capital, effectively picking a fight with the giants. Kinato is visibly stunned to realize they are facing the undisputed strongest guild in the land. Meanwhile, the blonde youth leans in with a predatory grin admitting that they intentionally target rivals because the satisfaction of crushing a larger opponent is far greater. Beside him, his companion stares coldly, questioning whether their presence in Seraph Wing's territory is a sign of true courage or simply pure idiocy. Dismissing the verbal sparring as a waste of time, she turns her back on the group to face the looming threat of the animated armor. As the metal giant lunges with its heavy blade, she moves with practiced ease, her focus shifting entirely to the combat at hand. With a sudden, violent surge of power, she obliterates the mechanical sentry in a blinding explosion. As the dust settles, she adjusts her stance, noting that their schedule is far too crowded to waste another second on such trivialities. Turning back to the group, she inquires if they were also hunting the suits of armor. She clarifies that her team was contracted specifically to clear out these metallic nuisances because they were obstructing mining operations in the Crystal Forest, over which her client holds exclusive rights. However, the officer quickly corrects her, explaining that their presence has nothing to do with the armor or mining rights. Their objective is far more personal. They're searching for a missing person named Ibis, who disappeared into the depths of the forest some time ago. He adjusts his glasses, explaining to Lamia that their primary objective is to neutralize the animated suits of armor threatening the area. He politely requests that she refrain from interfering so he doesn't miss his targets. Shifting his focus, he points toward the energetic young man nearby, identifying him as a newcomer who joined their ranks only a month ago. He notes the boy's peculiar habit of seeking out high vantage points, which prompts a sharp, defensive retort from the young apprentice standing beside them. He continues his explanation of the guild's hierarchy, detailing the progression from colorless to gold ranks. He reveals that the boy, despite his short tenure, has already achieved the prestigious gold rank and possesses the rare potential to become a regalia, a destiny that seems to fuel the boy's eccentric behavior as he belts out a self-composed theme song. This revelation leaves the young traveler stunned, his mind racing as he realizes they both began their journeys at the same time. The apprentice confirms the boy's status as a true prodigy, a fact that clearly weighs heavily on the traveler's mind. Deciding that their business there is concluded, he firmly grabs the boisterous gold ranker by the collar, ignoring the boy's protests for a fight. He leads his team away, leaving a visibly irritated Lamia behind as they head off to complete their actual mission. As the group departs, the apprentice shares a bit of history, explaining that the suits of armor were originally harmless magical inventions created by Ibis. She notes with a hint of confusion that they were never meant to be aggressive and had even been known to assist people in the past. She quickly defends the inventor's reputation, insisting that not everything Ibis creates is a failure. However, the conversation is abruptly cut short when the traveler senses a presence behind him, turning to find a hulking suit of armor looming over him. The mechanical construct lunges forward with terrifying speed, forcing the traveler to scramble back in a panic. Just as the threat intensifies, a sudden burst of magic erupts, and a voice calls out for him to move as a relaxation spell is cast to subdue the rampaging machine. He leans in close, eyes wide as he inspects the intricate metalwork of the animated suit. While Elsie watches with a mix of curiosity and concern, he points out the complex magic formulas etched across the plating. Realizing it is a sophisticated magical construct, he wonders if he can use his own understanding of such devices to soothe the aggressive machine. Suddenly, the metal plates rattle and a voice booms from within the helmet, startling both of them. The armor speaks with surprising eloquence, remarking that it has been caught in a rather embarrassing position. The sheer impossibility of a talking suit of armor leaves them momentarily speechless as it continues to rumble with life. The mechanical guardian quickly offers an apology for its earlier hostility, explaining that its core programming mandates the removal of any intruders. It then inquires if their presence is related to a search for Miss Ibis. He quickly tries to de-escalate the situation, assuring the construct that their intentions were merely a misunderstanding and they mean no harm. Softening its stance, the armor reveals that it was stationed here to protect the mine's precious crystals, which are vital resources for the people of Kisalani. It speaks with deep reverence for Miss Ibis, describing her as a selfless and talented inventor who dedicated her life to enriching the lives of others through her creations, always putting their needs above her own. To illustrate its point, the construct presents a detailed log of the townspeople's mundane troubles. It points out entries regarding a malfunctioning alarm clock belonging to a couple named Jose, showing the level of care Ibis put into even the smallest problems that plague the community. The list continues with various requests, from heating a cold room to improving knitting techniques. As he and Elsie look over the notes, the armor explains that Ibis kept a record of every minor worry bothering the villagers, seeking ways to solve each one with her inventions and bring comfort to their lives. A vision of the young inventor appears in their minds, showing her hunched over a workbench in a cluttered workshop. Her dream was never for fame or power, but simply to create magical gadgets that could make the daily lives of everyone around her just a little bit easier and brighter. He asks the Guardian if it knows her current whereabouts, hoping for a lead. The armor responds that while it can feel a lingering connection to her through the magic formula powered by her mana, it cannot pinpoint her exact location in the thick fog, only that she is somewhere nearby. He stepped forward with newfound determination, telling the others to leave the task to him. As Talius watched from the ground, the young man focused his energy, realizing that while the armor could only feel a vague presence, he possessed the skill to follow the specific trail of Ibis's mana through the thick fog. With a sharp intake of breath, he extended his hands, and a brilliant light began to emanate from his palms, cutting through the gloom as he locked onto the magical signature. Kinato analyzes the situation with a sharp eye. He reasons that if Ibis's mana is what animates the armor, her range of control must be limited to the confines of the crystal forest, providing them with a tactical boundary. He continues his explanation to his companions, comparing his approach to the way a body expels toxins. By unraveling the specific magic formula woven into the mana, he intends to use his own mastery of mana control to find a path forward. His gaze hardens with resolve. He is certain that by following this magical trail, he can pinpoint the exact route to their target. With a focused cry, he unleashes his technique, Sea-Time Magic, Relaxation. A surge of energy ripples outward, manifesting as glowing runes that dance through the air around the group. He peers through the shimmering haze, convinced that the hidden path to Ibis lies buried within the complex magical equations swirling amidst the fog. Release, he commands, and a magical resonance reaches a crescendo, illuminating the crystalline structures with a brilliant, piercing light. Seeing the way clear, he breaks into a sprint, urging the others to follow as he leads the charge deeper into the forest. His allies watch him go, struck by his ingenuity. Talius marvels at the sheer audacity of visualizing a magic formula in such a way, while Juna can only express her awe at his capabilities. He praises Kinato's effort, noting the sheer difficulty of what the young man is attempting. He remarks that while analyzing a magic formula from leftover traces is standard practice, unraveling one in real time is a feat of nearly impossible complexity. The red-cloaked warrior leaps into the conversation, enthusiastically agreeing that Kinato's mana control is nothing short of amazing. He recognizes the young man as a member of the Seraph Wings, a revelation that catches Kinato completely off guard. Back in the town of Kisalani, the news of Elsie's departure for the Crystal Forest spreads like wildfire. The announcement is met with immediate disbelief and a growing sense of dread among the townspeople. The local residents gather to discuss the situation, their faces etched with worry. They question if the girl can truly handle such a dangerous journey on her own, especially with the terrifying reports of animated armor prowling the woods. Despite their fears, the group resolves to return to their labors, acknowledging the deep bond between the girl and her mentor. They understand that Ibis, for all her reputation as a troublemaker, is the only one who can bring a true smile to Elsie's face and is utterly irreplaceable to her. In the heart of the town square, the current mayor, Maria, stands alongside her arrogant companion, Sid. Their presence draws the immediate ire of the citizens, who loudly protest their right to seize control of the vital crystal mining operations that the town depends on. The man in the fur-collared coat looms over a frustrated citizen, mockingly offering to sell back the very crystals he has diverted from the town's supply. He sneers at the townspeople, knowing full well that Kisalani's famous crafts cannot be made without the resources he now controls. Behind closed doors, the pair revels in the success of their scheme. They boast about spending a fortune to hire the Seraph Wings to interfere with the mining efforts, clearing the way for them to claim the entire crystal forest and its riches for themselves. She might have been miles away in her office, but her influence didn't dampen the spirits of the travelers. The spiky-haired youth let out a cry of shock, pointing a finger as he realized his new companion was the exact same age as him. The revelation that they were both 15 seemed to bridge the gap between them instantly. He didn't stop there, immediately asking if he could use a more casual name while beaming with excitement. For a boy who had spent most of his life only talking to his childhood friend, this sudden burst of social energy was overwhelming. It turned out they had both registered as adventurers at the same time, a coincidence that the blonde boy found absolutely thrilling. The quiet youth could barely find his words, his face turning a shade of red as he tried to keep up with the conversation. He had no experience dealing with such an intense personality and found himself stammering through a simple confirmation. The social pressure was far more taxing than any monster he had faced so far. He watched in bewilderment as his new acquaintance struck a pose, declaring that he was destined to be a hero forever. When asked why he had even bothered to become an adventurer if he wasn't aiming for the top, the boy with the headband could only stare, wondering if this person was actually for real. The energetic youth continued to lead the way, his boisterous attitude occasionally clashing with the others as they argued over who was actually in charge. Despite the bickering, The group made steady progress through the rocky terrain. Eventually, the path began to look familiar, signaling that they were nearing their destination. They walked together as the conversation turned toward the future, with the blond boy eagerly asking about his companion's dreams. Without waiting for a reply, he laid out his own grand vision: to become a hero so famous that a bronze statue would be built in his honor, serving as a beacon of hope for the entire kingdom. The aspiring hero's grand proclamations faded into the background as the group finally arrived at a large, multi-story building built into the side of a cliff. Massive water wheels churned rhythmically, providing power to the workshop that sat at the top of a long stone staircase. It was a place of industry and creation, standing out against the rugged landscape. They rushed up the stairs and through the doors, the young apprentice leading the charge with a shout for her master. The interior was a cluttered maze of tools and projects, a testament to the work of the man they had come to see. As they entered, the girl's excitement was infectious, heralding their arrival at the legendary Ibis's workshop. She had been playing a part, but the true Master Ibis now lay on the floor, his skin etched with the glowing, erratic lines of a magic formula gone horribly wrong. He struggled to speak as Kanado rushed to his side, his breath coming in ragged gasps as he warned them that they shouldn't have come. Kanado's face was a mask of terror as he realized the man on the floor was indeed the master he sought. The master's condition was critical. The intricate magic formula he had inscribed was now running rampant, devouring his mana and burning his body from the inside out. He admitted that the recoil from his own complex calculations had caused the eruption, leaving him powerless to stop the internal destruction. He lay there as the group stood paralyzed with fear, their eyes wide as they witnessed the master's suffering and the chaotic energy swirling around him. While they recoiled in horror, Lamia maintained a chilling composure, suggesting they simply wait for the magic to dissipate. She viewed the apprentice as a mere variable, a cause of death that would eventually resolve itself, and expressed a cold satisfaction in having kept Zio on a short leash. She continued her heartless assessment, concluding that the girl was a liability that needed to be taken care of for the sake of the mission. Her words were a death sentence delivered with the indifference of a bureaucrat. She watched him with an icy stare as he refused to accept her cold-blooded logic, shouting that the girl had worked tirelessly to help the townspeople and deserved better than to be discarded like a broken tool. With a fierce determination in his eyes, he roared his refusal to abandon her, his spirit unyielding in the face of Lamia's cruelty. While he stood firm in his defiance, the focus shifted to the immediate crisis unfolding before them. Talius roared for Kanado to hold strong and show the spirit of the Iron Fangs, even as Lamia screamed for the boy to stop before the sheer strain of the magic tore his own body apart. Ignoring the desperate warnings, the young mage channeled every remaining ounce of his mana into a final, explosive technique. With a guttural roar, he unleashed the Setai magic, relaxation and release, pushing the spell to its ultimate boost and sending a blinding shockwave of energy through the chamber. This surge of power did not strike with physical force, but with an eerie, overwhelming sense of tranquility. A nearby officer felt the tension instantly vanish from her shoulders, but her relief turned to dread as she realized the magic was spreading uncontrollably through the very threads of the environment. The sensation was intoxicating and terrifying, washing over her like a warm tide that stripped away all will to resist. She felt every muscle in her body surrender to the forced relaxation, realizing with a start that she was completely losing the ability to control her own limbs. It wasn't just her. The wave of tranquility affected everyone in the vicinity, causing them to slump to the ground in a heap. The will to fight or even stand was stripped away by the sheer weight of the gentle magic, leaving the once chaotic room in a state of forced, heavy peace. As the blinding light of the spell finally receded, the young man stood amidst the fallen, his breathing heavy and ragged. The manic energy in his eyes had softened, replaced by a weary but clear-headed gaze as the magical feedback finally subsided. Seeing him safe and conscious, the young apprentice couldn't contain herself any longer and lunged forward. She threw her arms around him in a fierce, desperate embrace, her relief manifesting as a sudden, clinging weight against his chest. He looked down at her, offering a quiet apology for the immense worry he had caused. Elsie sobbed into his tunic, her voice thick with emotion as she cried out in gratitude that her master had returned to his senses and survived the ordeal. Kanado stuffs his face with the local delicacies, his cheeks bulging as he eats. The host encourages him to keep going, and he happily agrees that the food is absolutely delicious. As he continues to eat, Talius nearby is equally impressed, noting how the meal really hits the spot. His host is delighted by the praise, glad to see the adventurers enjoying themselves. While they feast, Lamia is lost in a sugary bliss, her cheeks flushed as she declares the sweets incredible. Amidst her enjoyment, she expresses her profound relief that Elsie and Ibis are safe and sound. The atmosphere around them is one of pure celebration as the burly man, his laughter booming through the hall, announces his intention to treat every adventurer present to this grand feast. He pauses, looking back at the lively scene behind him, and offers a small apology for the noise his companions are making, though the joy in the room is clearly infectious. The young man strikes up a conversation with the burly man, who explains that while the townspeople might get a bit wild, they are deeply grateful for the help. This is an artisan town surrounded by mountains, and such grand parties are rare, but he smiles, noting that the lively atmosphere reminds him of his own hometown. His companion, Talius, chimes in with his usual bravado, reminding everyone that they are the invincible Iron Fangs. Kinato tries to temper his friend's ego, while the man offers a sincere thanks for the protection they provided to Elsie. The celebration continues, but the mood shifts slightly as the true Master Ibis approaches and asks for a moment of his time. Kinato looks up, surprised by the sudden request amidst the revelry. He pulls Kinato into a sudden, tight embrace, catching the young adventurer completely off guard. The Master's face is etched with sincerity as he explains that without Kinato's magic, the town and its people would have suffered immense damage. This heartfelt gratitude leaves the young man stunned, his eyes wide as he listens to the man thank him for coming all this way. While the hug lingers, he continues to offer his thanks, while Kinato, still a bit flustered, simply replies that he's glad he could be of help. A look of surprise crosses his face when Kinato expresses relief that he is safe, a sentiment he clearly didn't expect. Watching from a short distance, a sharp-eyed officer reflects on her mission to stop illegal business deals, unaware that others were busy protecting the Crystal Forest. Nearby, Ibis apologizes to Kinato for the trouble caused by his apprentice, while Elsie herself arrives to hear the full story. Elsewhere, Maria and Sid are cornered, shouting their defiance and demanding proof of any wrongdoing. Their outbursts are met with cold professionalism as the officer declares the mission a success and demands immediate payment for the Seraph Wing's work. She watches impassively as the two turn on each other. Sid roars in betrayal, calling Maria a snake, while she tearfully pleads for mercy, claiming she was coerced and offering up evidence of their illicit dealings hidden in a safe. Turning her attention away from the squabbling pair, she notices the bandage on Kinato's arm and questions why he hasn't used his magic to heal himself. He reacts with surprise to her bluntness as she hands him a tray of food, mentioning that Talius sent it before making a biting remark about the officer's possible motives. He looks down at his hand, admitting with a somber expression that he is unable to mend his own wounds. For reasons he doesn't fully understand, his magic becomes uncontrollable whenever he attempts to direct it toward his own body. Despite this limitation, he offers a small, selfless smile, explaining that his magic is meant for the benefit of others rather than himself. He seems at peace with this reality, though the officer watches him with a calculating gaze. She begins to walk away, but stops to offer a stern warning. She tells him that remaining at the lowest rank, colorless, will only hinder the Iron Fangs, urging him to rise through the ranks because he possesses potential far beyond his current status. As she departs, he stands in silence, the weight of her words sinking in. Later, in the bustling Kisalani City Plaza, a crowd gathers with a mix of anxiety and curiosity. Elsie stands among them, explaining that Master Ibis has something important to demonstrate. Despite a previous failure, she remains confident and eager to see the results of the Master's work. Suddenly, a massive, rumbling mechanical structure emerges, its presence announced by a deafening roar that startles the onlookers. The city erupts in chaos as the massive workshop begins to lift off the ground, defying gravity. Among the stunned onlookers, the young apprentice watches with wide-eyed wonder as her master's creation ascends into the sky. Inside the structure, the master inventor stares in disbelief at the group gathered before him, questioning why they would offer their assistance. They remind him of the danger he faced alone and insist on lending their strength to ensure the project's success. He sighs, admitting that the machine requires a constant, immense source of power that his own unstable mana control cannot provide. Without a steady flow of energy, the entire mechanism is doomed to fail before it can truly stabilize. Hearing this, the young warriors prepare themselves, their expressions hardening with resolve as the apprentice directs them to their stations. The air hums with anticipation as everyone takes their place for the final push. Suddenly, the Hero Point Seeker erupts with a blinding surge of golden energy, pouring every ounce of his spirit into the machine. His roar echoes through the workshop as he becomes the living battery the invention desperately needs. With the power source secured, the apprentice frantically adjusts the controls, her eyes gleaming behind her glasses as the complex magic formulas begin to glow with life. She urges the others to maintain the pressure, her voice barely audible over the mechanical throne. Amidst the high-stakes operation, she briefly recalls her simple motivation, looking down at a book of botanical illustrations. Though the harsh environment of the Crystal City forbids natural growth, Her heart remains set on the beauty of things that bloom. The workshop reaches a crescendo of light and sound, a beacon of hope rising above the rooftops. Her ultimate goal is clear: to transform this cold, metallic landscape into a vibrant meadow of flowers. She gazes upward as the flying workshop ascends, surrounded by brilliant, flower-shaped magical bursts that illuminate the night sky. Below, the townspeople are awestruck by the spectacle, calling it a crystal flower rain. The young inventor is moved to tears, seeing her dream of a meadow of flowers finally realized in the air above them. Leaning out from the workshop, she shouts an apology to everyone below, her voice filled with a new resolve. She promises that despite any future failures, she will never stop creating magical gadgets that bring joy. The crowd responds not with anger, but with enthusiastic encouragement, shouting out requests for new inventions and telling her to keep doing things her own way. Kanata watches the exchange with a quiet smile, seeing how much the community truly supports her. Standing tall amidst the celebration, she confidently accepts the challenge, vowing to handle whatever comes next. Behind her, Master Ibis lets out a boisterous laugh, the workshop's success a testament to their combined efforts. As the festivities continue, the young man in the white headband turns to his companion, expressing his genuine happiness for Master Ibis. They stand on the stone steps, the weight of the recent crisis finally lifting. He responds by declaring his intent to keep accumulating hero points, noting that kindness pushed to its limit transforms into pure determination. He suggests they both continue following their own separate paths, hoping for an eventual reunion at the peak of their journeys. Before they part, the hero seeker admits a personal wish. He truly wants to test his strength against his friend in a proper duel one day. He listens as his companion reflects on his own path. The young man with the headband admits that while becoming an adventurer was his original dream, simply reaching that goal isn't enough to meet the high standards set before him. He realizes that to truly stand beside his friend, he must aim higher and push beyond his current limits. With a newfound determination, he vows to become more ambitious, striving to be an equal on the field of adventure. As the two friends part ways under the festive banners of the town, the focus shifts elsewhere. Deep within the halls of power, the kingdom's Council of 12 has reconvened, and a scarred man stands ready as the political gears of the realm begin to turn once more. The grand architecture of the kingdom's council building stands as a symbol of order, housing both the Adventurers Association and the Magic Research Society. These two pillars of society work in tandem to ensure the safety and stability of the realm. Inside the hallowed halls, Kemenagi takes her place at the head of a long table, preparing to open a formal session. Despite the boisterous shouts of adventure echoing from the back, where a rowdy captain makes his presence known, she remains composed, thanking the gathered members for their attendance. He, however, is far from composed, as Jian leaps onto his chair and bellows his resignation, declaring his intent to abandon his duties for a life of wandering. Beside him, Kanato can only watch in stunned silence as his companion causes a public spectacle, even going so far as to challenge the others to a duel. The rest of the Council of 12 looks on with varying degrees of annoyance and amusement at the display. While some members discuss their personal lives, Kanato sinks into his seat, overwhelmed by the gravity of the assembly and wishing for nothing more than to return to the quiet of his home. Noticing the commotion, Kamenagi addresses the rowdy captain directly, acknowledging his long absence. Jian responds with his characteristic bravado, boasting about his new guild and eagerly offering to spar with her or the captain of the Seraph Wings. She attempts to steer the conversation back to the matter at hand, but her words are cut short by a violent magical eruption. A blinding light, accompanied by a thunderous unlock command blast through the room, sending several council members reeling from the sudden impact. Once the dust settles, the council leader reveals the dark truth behind the emergency summons, her expression hardening as she speaks. A wave of disappearances has been sweeping through the kingdom, specifically targeting those gifted with magical abilities. The gravity of the situation deepens as the confirmation comes that several of these missing individuals have already been found dead. With the threat escalating, the council has officially decreed that they must identify and stop the person responsible for these heinous acts. She remains composed as the young inventor leans in with a chillingly enthusiastic suggestion to simply eliminate anyone who seems suspicious. The girl's eyes are wide with a manic gleam as she even asks to switch seats, claiming to be frightened by the person beside her, though her own words are far more unsettling. Because of this tension, the officer with the glasses intervenes, clarifying that the Council of 12's highest priority is now the identification and elimination of any individual posing a genuine threat to the kingdom. The various members of the council listen intently, their expressions grim as the weight of this new mandate settles over the room. Moments later, under the cover of night, the association staff gather to express their gratitude to the group of adventurers. Hibiki and her colleague acknowledge the vital role the warriors played, their voices soft against the quiet evening air as they thank them for their invaluable assistance. As they begin to depart, the group's internal dynamics remain as lively as ever. A warning is issued to keep the banter light and avoid turning their playful bickering into a real confrontation, though the laughter that follows suggests the bond between them remains strong despite the day's trials. Before they part ways, the young inventor offers a final, energetic farewell, promising her expertise in magical gadgets should they ever have need of her. The others exchange hopeful words, looking forward to the next time their paths might cross in this unpredictable world. Suddenly, the arrogant Sid makes a hasty and undignified exit, his mocking laughter echoing through the streets as he flees. He shouts back a final insult, declaring that they will never meet again, his departure as chaotic and self-centered as his presence had been. Meanwhile, far from his frantic escape, a different sort of gathering takes place in a shadowed alley. A tall, cloaked figure stands alongside Keminaji and another woman in striking attire, as they complain about the exhausting nature of their recent work and contemplate finding a place to eat. Upon spotting this unfamiliar trio, the adventurers pause, their curiosity piqued by the stranger's presence. None of them recognize the newcomers, leaving them to wonder who these individuals are and what business they might have in the city at such an hour. He stands with his companions, Talius and Elsie, alongside the members of the Seraph Wings. They take stock of their combined forces, acknowledging the presence of the Iron Fangs, the magical gadget engineer, and the elite Seraph Wings as they prepare for whatever lies ahead. Nearby, Keminaji watches them with a cold, calculating gaze. She speaks to her cloaked associates, noting their luck in finding so many sacrificial lambs at once, and mentions that a certain individual will be very pleased with this discovery. Her presence does not go unchallenged. As Sid steps forward, his face contorted in rage. He bellows at her, demanding to know who gave her permission to wander the area and telling her to cease her actions immediately. Instead of retreating, she moves with unsettling speed, closing the distance until her face is inches from his. The air grows heavy as she leans in, her expression unreadable but predatory. Pulling away with a chillingly serene smile, she expresses her hope that they will all serve as a worthy offering. Behind her, Sid gasps and clutches his chest, while Kinato and Talius watch in mounting horror at the sudden shift in the atmosphere. The ground trembles as a colossal, skeletal beast draped in shadows manifests, summoned by her companions, who find the prospect of capture too troublesome. Recognizing the dire threat, Talius shouts for Ibis to lead the townspeople to safety, urging an immediate evacuation as the monstrosity looms over the street. The creature strikes with devastating force, sending debris flying and causing the cobblestones to shatter. Panic erupts among the civilians, their screams echoing through the narrow alleyways as they flee the sudden destruction. Seeing the carnage, the young swordsman springs into the air, his blade ready. He calls out to the beast, sensing the overwhelming aura of malice it radiates, and declares his intent to put an end to its rampage. He lunges with all his might, but the skeletal beast barely flinches, dismissing his attack as pathetic. The monster mocks his feeble attempt to stop the destruction, its voice echoing with cold disdain. Following the crushing blow, he is sent reeling back, his body slamming into the hard earth with a sickening thud. Talius and Elsie cry out in desperation as they watch him struggle to draw breath, his vision blurring as the weight of his failure sets in. While the monster looms over the terrified townspeople, it scoffs at the trite magic they employ, comparing their efforts to mere floral decorations. Below, he can only watch in silent agony as the people he wanted to protect are treated like insects by the towering shadow. In the depths of his despair, his mind drifts back to his simple dream of being a kind adventurer who supports others. He remembers the warmth of being accepted by Zio and Elsie, questioning how he could have ever thought himself worthy of their encouragement. This sense of belonging had only just begun to take root, fueled by the small pride he felt in being able to adjust the mana of his companions. He had finally started to believe he was a real adventurer, a feeling that now seems like a cruel illusion. Gritting his teeth against the pain, he realizes that his current strength is a joke if he cannot protect the very people who showed him kindness. The frustration boils over as he stares at the ground, knowing he cannot win this fight as he is now. Suddenly, a memory of Liney's bright smile flashes before him, her voice echoing her wish to help as many people as possible with her magic. Her selfless aspiration serves as a final, painful reminder of the hero he yearns to be. Driven by this desperate resolve, he clutches his chest, deciding to unleash his magic upon his own body. Though he knows he cannot control the overwhelming burden it places on him, he sees no other way to bridge the gap between his weakness and the monster's power. He unleashes his sea-time magic with a violent burst of energy, the sheer force of the activation causing the air to ripple and explode around it. He forces the skeletal beast to recoil, a low groan escaping its jagged maw as it feels the shift in the atmosphere. Nearby, Talius cries out his name in a mixture of shock and desperation, while Liney and Elsie watch from a distance, their faces etched with worry. In response to the monster's momentary hesitation, he pushes his body beyond its limits, activating a devastating flow boost. His movements become a blur of super acceleration, his fist cutting through the air with the force of a meteor. As he closes the distance, his face is a mask of bloody determination, his eyes wide with the strain of the magic coursing through him. He roars a defiant vow, declaring that he will not allow the creature to inflict any further destruction upon the town. Liney explains the mystery behind Kanado's reluctance to use magic on himself. She reveals that when they were children, they were attacked by wild animals in the mountains. Kanado used his magic to save her, but the lack of control nearly cost him his life, leaving him with severe injuries and a deep-seated fear of his own power. She continues, noting that his selfless nature hasn't changed since that day. Kaminagi observes that his hesitation stems from that trauma and a desire to protect his grandmother from ever having to worry about him like that again. Back in the heat of battle, the young warrior stands bloodied but unyielding against the skeletal beast. His companions, Talius and Elsie, watch in horror as he prepares for another exchange, his body battered but his spirit unbroken. He grits his teeth, mentally cataloging the damage, a mangled hand and deep lacerations on his leg from the impact. Despite the searing pain, his resolve only hardens. He is determined to stop this creature regardless of the toll it takes on his body. The monster looms over him, analyzing his technique with cold precision. It notes how he accelerates his mana for physical enhancement, a simple but effective method that relies entirely on the user's focus. It even offers a mocking compliment for the strength of his last strike. It then roars with contempt, its hollow eyes glowing as it mocks the fragility of his human form. The beast demands to know if this pathetic display is truly the best he can offer, questioning if he is even fighting with everything he has. Far from the immediate carnage, the woman in fishnets listens to the distant echoes of the struggle with a sadistic grin. Beside her, the tall, cloaked figure remains silent, seemingly bored by the noise and the chaos unfolding below. He muses on the many mages he has faced recently, none of whom proved to be worthy sacrifices for his cause. For him, the thrill of the hunt is a fleeting shadow, leaving him perpetually unsatisfied and searching for a true challenge. He looked down with utter contempt, his voice echoing from beneath the skull-like hood. To him, the struggle before him was pathetic. The magic and strength displayed were nothing more than the buzzing of insects. He marveled at how easily they broke, despite all their supposed training. He lunged forward, a blur of dark fabric and lethal intent, demanding to know if his opponent truly sought death. As he loomed over the fallen boy, he mocked the audacity of challenging a power so far beyond his reach while being so woefully unprepared. Suddenly, a shout rang out as the glasses-wearing officer threw himself into the fray, calling out a warning. His sudden interference forced the cloaked figure to recoil, his momentum broken by the unexpected arrival of reinforcements. He and his companion rushed to the boy's side, their faces etched with worry as they assessed his battered state. While they urged him to stop being reckless and focus his magic on supporting them instead, he remained silent, his mind racing with the heavy burden of maintaining the sea-time magic despite his failing strength. He gritted his teeth, a fierce resolve burning in his eyes as he stared down his tormentor. The pain was secondary to the burning need to protect those around him. He was prepared to sacrifice his very body if it meant stopping the monster before him. His display of raw willpower was almost too much for her to witness, her expression pained as she watched from the sidelines. Beside her, the officers stood tense, both of them feeling the weight of the sacrifice the boy was willing to make. She could only watch as he forced himself to stand, his legs trembling violently as he faced the destruction surrounding the village. Though fear gripped his heart, he knew there were times when backing down was not an option, and he refused to let any more senseless ruin befall his home. While he struggled to his feet, the officer found himself pinned beneath the shadow of a massive, horned beast, his voice strained as he shouted for others to flee. In the face of such overwhelming power, he realized the grim reality of their situation, yet he still fought to save the life of the villager trapped beside him. He grits his teeth, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. If he retreats now, there will be no one left to stand between the innocent and the encroaching darkness. The thought of failure is unbearable. He demands of himself, who will offer protection if he turns tail. Seeing this fire in his eyes, the captain of the Iron Fangs places a steadying hand on his shoulder, acknowledging the strength of his conviction. Nearby, the young mage watches, his own expression a mix of exhaustion and renewed hope, while in the distance, the horned beast lets out a deafening, blood-curdling roar that shakes the very air. The physical contact snaps him back to the present, clearing the fog of doubt from his mind. He offers a quick, sincere apology to his companion for his momentary lapse, his voice steadying as he prepares to rejoin the fray, much to the relief of the young inventor standing by. With his spirit restored, he rallies the group, his voice ringing out with newfound authority. He declares with absolute certainty that they will protect the town and that the Iron Fangs will be the ones to finally take down the hooded menace threatening their home. However, his bold words are met with cold, mocking laughter from the tall, cloaked figure looming over them. The adversary sneers, questioning exactly who they think they are capable of protecting, while the young mage and the inventor can only stare back in grim silence, feeling the immense pressure of the enemy's presence. The mockery is followed by a brutal, swift strike as the skeletal beast lunges forward. The impact is devastating, sending the young mage crashing through wooden tables and debris, his body battered and bloodied as the monster looms over him, taunting him for his perceived weakness. Despite the violence of the fall, he struggles to sit up as his friends rush to his side in a panic. He gasps out that he is fine, trying to mask the pain even as the dust settles around them and the gravity of their situation becomes even more apparent. As the dust clears, the officer takes a defensive stance, revealing the intricate mechanics of his magic. He explains that he can summon and control goblins, even swapping places with them or reshaping them into arrows, though he warns that such maneuvers are limited and must be used with absolute precision. He rallies his companions, declaring that the Iron Fangs will now take the lead in this desperate struggle. Beside him, Kanado stands firm, his face bloodied but his gaze unwavering as they prepare to escalate their counterattack. He braces himself as the skeletal beast lunges with terrifying speed, its massive, bone-like limb crashing down and shattering the ground where they stood moments before. The creature's hollow eyes glow with a malevolent light as it relentlessly pursues its prey. It roars in frustration as the captain of the Iron Fangs leaps into the fray, grappling with its massive arm. He mocks the beast's predictable nature, calling out to his allies as he prepares to strike the towering ogre. He continues his relentless assault, his strength surprising even the seasoned Talius, who watches from the sidelines. Talius realizes that the young warrior is far more capable than he initially appeared, possessing a grit that defies his age. He takes advantage of the distraction to draw his bow and fire a volley of magical arrows, weaving through the chaos with practiced ease. He explains the mechanics of his teleportation magic, noting that he can swap places with his projectiles, though he warns that his energy is nearly depleted and this will be his final maneuver. Meanwhile, he finds himself high above the battlefield, cornered by the monster's massive hand, but he remains calm, analyzing the beast's limited options. He realizes the creature cannot use its injured limbs effectively, and he decides to focus all his remaining strength into a single, localized burst of super acceleration. He unleashes a shimmering disk of force that slices through the air, striking the skeletal horror directly in its gaping maw. The impact sends shards of bone and dark energy flying, momentarily staggering the seemingly unstoppable force. He seizes the moment to deliver a devastating punch with his shattered right hand, the sheer force of the impact echoing through the square. His allies watch in awe as he stands triumphant, his voice ringing out with a final defiant command for the monster to leave their town forever. Kanado kneels in the dust, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He realizes the dire situation. His mana reserves are nearly depleted, making it impossible to maintain both his enhanced vision and his offensive magic simultaneously. The toll of the battle has far exceeded his initial estimates. He tries to force himself back to his feet, but his legs tremble violently under the weight of his own exhaustion. Every muscle screams in protest, yet a chilling, appreciative voice echoes through the clearing, acknowledging his resilience even as his strength fails. The skeletal beast looms over him, its hollow gaze fixed on the young mage. It admits that Kanado's strikes were surprisingly potent, so much so that it has decided to claim him for its own purposes rather than simply discarding him as a common sacrifice. Nearby, Talius watches the exchange with a mixture of fear and disbelief. He grits his teeth, his own body shaking as he curses the boy's stubborn refusal to stay down, even when faced with such overwhelming darkness. The monster suddenly claps its bony hands together, the sound sharp and final. It commands the attention of everyone present, its voice carrying an eerie authority as it prepares to escalate the confrontation. A torrent of oppressive, dark energy erupts from the creature, swirling into the air like a localized storm. It warns its prey not to flee in terror, mockingly hoping that they won't perish before the true display of its power begins. Despite the crushing pressure of the dark magic, the boy looks up with fierce, unyielding eyes. He manages to find a sliver of strength left in his battered frame, vowing to end the threat once and for all, much to the twisted delight of his monstrous opponent. He stands triumphantly atop the remains of the skeletal beast, his expression cold and unwavering. Despite the previous exhaustion, a new surge of confidence radiates from him as he looms over the shattered skull of his foe. Looking down at the creature, he declares that their games have come to an end, referring to the once menacing entity as nothing more than a puppy. With a sickening crack, he exerts pressure, further splintering the bone beneath his feet. Moments later, he rests casually atop a swirling mass of dark energy, surveying the destruction. He admits the beast was formidable, but notes with a smirk that he still has plenty of energy to spare, while the monster lies in pieces across the battlefield. Elsewhere, the atmosphere is thick with tension as the observers react to the unfolding chaos. Juna and Elsie are visibly shaken, while Talius and Lamia remain focused, noting the gravity of the situation and the unexpected arrival of high-ranking captains like Raid. Amidst the shifting magical currents, Jian prepares to depart, grumbling about the strain on his body. His companion, Raid, receives instructions to find his own way home as they vanish through a shimmering portal, leaving the immediate area behind. In a different sector, a veteran researcher named Ajim monitors the magical ley lines. As the head of the barrier department, he coordinates the complex teleportation spells required to move the captains across the kingdom, his face etched with the gravity of his duty. This mobilization had begun 40 minutes earlier during a tense meeting of the Council of 12. Raid had burst into the chamber to report the escalating trouble, prompting Lamia to prepare for her deployment despite the suddenness of the call to action. Back in the present, Raid utilizes a specialized magical gadget to link his vision with Lamia's. He meticulously records his observations on a notepad, though he can't help but question the necessity of the playful emoji included in the device's interface. He stands with Jian as Ajim delivers the news, explaining that suspicious figures linked to the current crisis have been spotted. Jian tries to lighten the mood, noting that the captain of the Seraph Wings is far too serious to appreciate his humor. He watches as the researcher's tone shifts, warning the captain that his own squad is also in peril. The captain's expression hardens at the news, while the elderly man continues to monitor the unfolding events through his magical interface. Meanwhile, the skeletal beast recoils in disbelief as it senses the arrival of such powerful foes. It acknowledges that captains like Jian and Talius operate on a level far beyond even the most elite gold-ranked adventurers, realizing the true scale of the opposition. The creature continues its assessment of the battlefield, noting the hidden strength within the young Juna and the unwavering loyalty of the battered warrior. It sees a group of people who have been pushed to their absolute physical and emotional limits. Its gaze then falls upon Kinato, whom it perceives as a vessel of immense, untapped potential. Despite the boy's inherent kindness, the monster sees the toll the battle has taken on everyone who fought so desperately to save the town. He clenches his hand as the tension reaches a breaking point, signaling a shift in the air. He looks up with a dark, unsettling smile, his eyes devoid of their usual warmth as he asks if the beast is truly ready for him. The skeletal monster responds with a manic cackle, delighted by the prospect of claiming such a powerful prize. It lunges forward, eager to seize the boy as dark energy begins to swirl violently around them. The skeletal beast suddenly lunges, its bony claws snatching the two girls from the ground. It speaks in a chilling tone, declaring it is time to return home and referring to them as noise. As it retreats, a colossal explosion from the captain's assault rocks the area, leaving the young warrior wide-eyed at the sheer scale of the power. Meanwhile, the captives struggle in the monster's grip, their cries for release ignored as it flees the immediate danger. Above the chaos, the masked captain intervenes, manifesting a complex geometric structure known as Ex Machina, before raining down a barrage of sharp projectiles upon the fleeing enemy. He watches helplessly as the creature deftly evades the lethal downpour, leaping across the rooftops with its prizes still firmly in its grasp. The boy finds his voice, screaming for the monster to apologize to the citizens it has terrorized before it disappears. The skeletal entity merely scoffs, noting that the youth has exhausted the last of his strength just to keep pace with its movements. It continues its retreat into the darkening sky, its voice echoing back with a promise that their magic will clash again and that they will settle their score another day, urging the boy to hone his skills until then. Its hollow eyes glow with a sinister light as it repeats its dark invitation, relishing the prospect of mutual destruction in the battles to come. Left behind and gasping for air, the young mage steadies himself, his gaze burning with a new, fierce resolve to stop the beast with his own magic, no matter how many times they must face each other. He sways on his feet, his face bruised and his spirit pushed to its absolute limit. As his strength finally fails, a familiar figure catches him, supporting his weight before he can collapse. Jian looks down at him with a soft, proud smile, acknowledging the incredible struggle the boy just endured. He tells Kanado that he did a great job and put up a magnificent fight. High above the quieted town, where smoke still drifts from the aftermath of the battle, the two stand together on a rooftop, a moment of hard-earned rest amidst the tragedy. He rushed through the door, calling out for his grandmother with news to share, but the memory twisted into a nightmare. A skeletal beast loomed over the ruins of his home, its voice a raspy chill as it boasted of the town's destruction and challenged him to a final, desperate struggle. The boy jolted awake with a sharp cry, his eyes wide with the lingering terror of the dream. His head was wrapped in thick bandages, and the soft light of a room replaced the darkness of the skeletal monster's shadow. Beside him, a familiar voice called out in surprise, noting his sudden return to consciousness. Lainey sat by his bedside, her expression shifting from concern to relief as she saw him finally stir from his long slumber. She quickly explained that he had been brought to a hospital and had remained unconscious for 3 full days. He could hardly believe the passage of time, his mind reeling as she described how he had tossed and turned in a feverish sweat throughout his recovery. To lighten the mood, she struck a playful pose, revealing a nurse-themed costume she claimed was the perfect attire for nursing someone back to health. He could only stare in bewilderment, questioning the necessity of such an outfit while she beamed with forced cheer. Her playful demeanor soon faded into a somber reflection, as she admitted that seeing him in such a broken state made her realize the weight of her own influence in pushing him toward this path. He tried to apologize for the trouble he'd caused, but she cut him off, insisting that this was simply part of her duty. She continued, her voice trembling slightly as she confessed her own fears and the heavy responsibility she felt to see things through. She wondered aloud if they might have been happier simply staying in their town, running the clinic in peace rather than facing such dangers. Finally, with tears welling in her eyes and a flush creeping across her face, she laid bare her true motivation. She wasn't just there out of duty. She was there because the thought of being apart from him was more than she could bear. She continues to weep, her voice thick with regret as she apologizes for the worries she caused him. He, despite his own injuries, tries to comfort her, promising that he will still watch over her even without his magic. Their intimate moment is suddenly shattered when Jian bursts through the door, his loud entrance causing her to jump in surprise, while he looks on in bewilderment. As she tries to hide her embarrassment, a woman in a nurse's uniform steps into the room, coolly reminding them of their surroundings before offering a key to lock the door for more privacy. He watches with wide eyes as the newcomer effortlessly restrains the boisterous Jian, who seems to have met his match in this formidable woman. He then turns his focus to the aftermath of the battle, asking about the safety of the townspeople and his companions. In response, his cellmate explains that the kingdom has already sent a reconstruction team and that their friends are recovering nearby. She responds with a blunt, teasing remark about his gruesome appearance, though her gentle smile reveals her relief at his survival. She acknowledges that his sacrifice was what truly saved the people of the town. She then declares it is time for his medicine, summoning a mass of writhing tentacles that surge toward his bed as part of her unique Octomia magic. He lets out a blood-curdling scream as the healing magic takes hold, while his companion casually explains that Kureha is an old friend whose family possesses this rare, if terrifying, form of restorative power. He watches as the nurse, Kureha, begins her assessment, noting that while his sea-time magic is versatile, it is notoriously difficult to master. Because of this complexity, she explains that her own method is designed to trigger immediate natural healing. The moment her magical appendages make contact, his open gashes begin to knit themselves shut. This rapid closure is a stark contrast to his own techniques, which she describes as a slower process akin to moist wound healing that often struggles to keep pace with severe, life-threatening trauma. She then leans in with a chilling warning. If he continues to recklessly overtax his body with magical enhancements, he will eventually shatter his mana circuits, stripping him of his abilities permanently. After delivering this ultimatum, she suggests he spend his recovery time in deep reflection before concluding the day's session, leaving him haunted by the prospect of becoming powerless and unable to protect others. Moments later, the heavy atmosphere is broken when Jian strolls in, playfully complaining about the nurse's cold attitude and jokingly asking if she could at least break a bone for him to fix. As the group settles into the quiet of the infirmary, a sudden, boisterous laugh erupts from behind the partition of the neighboring bed. The curtain pulls back to reveal Zio, who strikes a dramatic pose and loudly proclaims that Kanado should feel privileged to recover in the presence of his heroic aura. He sits up in the adjacent bed as Lainey introduces herself with a friendly smile. Kanado quickly fills the silence, explaining that this is Zio and that he is the same age as them. Kureha watches the interaction with a curious expression, wondering if Kanado has made a new friend. The young man responds with a curt, embarrassed greeting, his face flushing a deep crimson as he avoids direct eye contact. Kanado can hardly believe the sudden change in his neighbor's demeanor, finding the display of shyness unexpected. This awkward energy quickly spreads, leaving Liney wide-eyed and flustered by the unexpected arrival of a boy her own age. While Kanado remains remarkably composed, the three of them form a trio of mutual social paralysis, each unsure of how to break the tension. Outside the stone walls of the infirmary, the capital begins to adjust to a new reality, with word spreading that the Seraph Wings will be assisting with security from now on. Inside, the weight of recent failures hangs heavy, as the thought of letting their enemies escape feels like an unforgivable stain on a hero's reputation. Memories of the chaos resurface, specifically the desperate moment he spent clawing at the rubble. He had been certain he could reach the trapped man in time, driven by a singular, frantic need to save a life despite the crumbling world around them. Shaking off the memory, he regains his usual bravado and asks Kanado why he looks so shocked. With a confident smirk, he reminds his friend that he is, after all, a hero, and such feats are to be expected of him. The quiet of the room is suddenly shattered as the door flies open, and two familiar figures rush inside. Kanado's eyes widen in surprise as he recognizes his companions, their sudden appearance catching him completely off guard. Juna throws herself forward, tears streaming down her face as she apologizes profusely, her relief at seeing him awake overwhelming her. Beside her, Talia stands with a look of quiet concern, glad to see their friend is finally on the mend after the harrowing ordeal. She is overcome with guilt, tears streaming down her face as she laments her perceived uselessness. She believes it was her fault that Kanado had to push himself so far. Because of this guilt, she makes a tearful vow to become stronger than anyone, promising that Kanado will be able to rely on her completely from now on. Kanado watches her, his expression softening. While she makes her vow, he feels the same way, a quiet determination settling over him as he looks back on how much everyone has had to encourage and help him. He realizes he wants to change and contribute to the guild even more. As he watches Zio, he admits his desire to be just as strong, wanting to protect people and handle things on his own. With a newfound fire in his eyes, he declares his intention to master the art of boosting his body with magic so he can fight, win, and protect those he cares about. In response to his sudden outburst of ambition, the nurse stares at him in stunned silence, her mouth agape as she wonders if he heard a single word of her advice. She punctuates her frustration by smacking him with her clipboard, calling him a complete idiot and warning that another reckless use of magic could permanently damage his mana circuits and physical abilities. Looking him straight in the eye, she delivers a harsh truth. He simply isn't built for combat. She explains that magic is deeply tied to both mind and body, and in his current state, he is not cut out for the life of a fighter. She continues her assessment, noting that precise control of mana and physical reinforcement is exactly what the boy needs to master. Jian, listening intently, realizes the current burden is simply too great for the young man, who risks destroying himself because he cannot sense his own limits. Because of this realization, he decides that a change of pace is necessary, ordering the boy to step away from missions and focus on recovery and training. A sudden spark of inspiration crosses his face as he announces he has a specific plan in mind. He reveals his intention to send the boy to train with the Meijo clan, a group renowned for their unparalleled expertise in mana manipulation. The mere mention of the clan sends a shockwave through the group, with his companions reacting in disbelief and awe at the prospect of encountering a legendary group they have never even seen. He further explains that since women are naturally superior at handling mana, their territory is the ideal environment for the boy to hone his skills. Moments later, the boy finds himself standing amidst the fierce warriors of the clan, their spirited shouts echoing around him as he realizes the intensity of the training that awaits. In certain corners of the world, designated high-risk zones exist where the concentration of mana is so intense it warps the very environment. Entry into these hazardous regions is strictly forbidden to all but the most seasoned adventurers, as the unusual magical effects can be lethal. These forbidden lands include the ruins of the old capital and the treacherous dragon's nest, places where survival is never a guarantee, regardless of one's rank or experience. The sheer density of power makes every step a gamble with fate. Kanado finds himself approaching the threshold of such a place, his face pale and slick with sweat as he passes a grim warning, a bleached skull mounted atop a wooden stake. The oppressive atmosphere of the zone is already beginning to take its toll on his nerves. He is not making this journey alone, however, as Jian leads the way with a casual stride that belies the danger. When Kanado nervously questions the wisdom of their unannounced visit to the Meijo clan, Jian reassures him, explaining that he owes them a debt from long ago and is confident they will be welcome. They continue their steep ascent, the air thinning as they climb closer to the sky and deeper into the Meijo clan's sovereign territory. Jian warns his companion to keep his mana in check, for the clan members are masters of the craft and will treat any reckless display of power as an act of aggression from a marauder. The pair eventually crests a ridge to find a hidden valley teeming with life, a sight that leaves Kinato breathless. The atmosphere is so thick with mana that his skin tingles with every breath, and he marvels at the rare sugar grass growing freely at his feet, a testament to the area's incredible vitality. Back in the city a few days prior, Zio had been overcome with frustration at being left behind. He had desperately wanted to see the Meijo clan for himself, but Lamia had already scheduled him for a different mission, leaving him to vent his annoyance at the missed opportunity. Before they departed, Kureha had meticulously wrapped Kanato's arm, sternly warning him not to remove the bandage lest his wounds reopen during the trek. While Zio jokingly demanded souvenirs from the trip, Kanato understood that they were heading into a land of ancient power, not a place for casual mementos. He listens as Talius and Juna express their terror regarding his destination, the village of the Meijo clan. They can't believe he's heading to a place that even seasoned adventurers fear, warning him that it is a territory where outsiders are rarely welcome. Because of their warnings, he feels a surge of apprehension. Talius, trembling beneath the sheets, whispers of the clan's swift and brutal punishments, claiming they will snatch up and punish anyone who so much as sets foot in their domain. Despite their fear, Talius and Juna can't help but request gifts from the journey. Juna asks for something sweet, while Talius hopes for a practical item he can use daily, though they both doubt such things even exist in that forbidden place. Meanwhile, Liney's worry manifests as anger, and she lashes out at him for being reckless. When she offers to come along to protect him, he firmly refuses, insisting that the danger is far too great for her to face and that he must go alone. Moments later, back in the harsh reality of the mana zone, Kinato chews on a blade of sugar grass to steady his nerves. He recalls the weight of his friend's concern and reaffirms his resolve. He knows he must grow stronger at the Meijo village if he is to protect those he left behind. As the two travelers move through the canyon, his focus is shattered by a sudden presence. High above on the sheer rock walls, a masked figure watches them, moving with impossible agility before leaping down to confront them. The stranger's voice rings out, identifying Jian as a criminal and accusing him of violating the clan's sacred order. He can only stare in confusion as the warrior points out Jian's distinctive braid and scar, confirming his identity with cold certainty. Without another word, the masked assailant strikes, unleashing a devastating blow that shatters the ground. A massive explosion of rock and dust erupts, signaling the violent start of their reception into the Meijo clan's territory. The masked assailant's strike forces a sudden shift in plans. Jian, realizing the danger, shouts for Kinato to hold on tight, warning him not to bite his tongue. He decides that instead of fleeing, they must charge full speed ahead, straight into the heart of the Meijo clan's village. Kinato can only let out a terrified scream as they hurtle forward. As they race toward the cliffs, a swarm of Meijo warriors on winged mounts descends upon them from the skies. Their cries echo through the air, a chorus of pursuit that signals there is no easy escape from this territory. He looks back in terror, the realization of their dire situation finally sinking in. The warriors are relentless, their masks cold and unyielding as they close the distance, leaving the two fugitives with nowhere to hide. High above the clouds, nestled within the jagged peaks of a designated high-risk zone, lies Sky Dragon, the ancestral home of the Meijo clan. The village is a fortress of stone and tradition, guarded by those who tolerate no outsiders. Upon their arrival, the duo is immediately seized. The villagers react with a mixture of shock and hostility, pointing out that a man has dared to enter their domain. They quickly identify Jian, branding him a criminal whose presence is an affront to their laws. They are soon surrounded by an angry mob of warriors, each vying for the chance to deliver justice. The air is thick with demands for punishment and purging, as the clan members clamor to be the ones to strike down the trespassers. Moments later, the tension shifts as they are brought before the village authorities. Jian offers a humble apology for their unannounced arrival, while an official explains that the village is particularly on edge as they prepare for the upcoming Lunar Fighting Festival, an event that has everyone's nerves frayed. Two formidable figures then step forward. Latna, the boisterous captain of the West Guard, and Karyu, the stoic captain of the East Guard. While Latna finds the timing of their arrival hilariously poor, Karyu acknowledges the reason for their visit, understanding that the young boy seeks to master the secret techniques of the Meijo. She issues a cold warning, ordering the intruders to depart before they lose their lives, but Jian merely scoffs at the suggestion. Beside her, Latna erupts in a mocking laughter, reminding Jian of his criminal status, while Karyu explains that their clan's mana manipulation is a sacred, subconscious legacy, not a skill to be shared with outsiders. This legacy is further complicated by their history, as they recall how Jian, known then as the Monkey, once barged into their village uninvited, ignoring all rules to eat and sleep as he pleased, only spared by the clan chief's mercy. Because of this dark history with selfish men who do as they wish, Latna continues her taunts, leaving Kinado to sink into a quiet, embarrassed silence. He stares blankly as the weight of his naivety sets in, realizing how foolish he was to believe they would be greeted with open arms. Despite the rejection, Kiryu clarifies that while they won't surrender Jian, Kinado is free to depart, though the boy suddenly hesitates, asking if he might pose a personal question. He leans in, catching her off guard by asking if she suffers from chronic stiffness in her shoulders or lower back. While the surrounding warriors burst into laughter at the absurdity of the question, Kinado remains serious, explaining that he can sense her pelvis is slightly out of alignment from the strain of pushing her mana and body to their absolute limits. He stands amidst the mocking laughter of the Meijo warriors, who find his offer of help absurd. They boast that their mana is a tool to turn their very bodies into weapons, questioning how an outsider could possibly understand their unique connection to energy. Looming over him with a sharp, predatory gaze, Captain Kiryu finds the situation intriguing and dares him to prove his claims. She mocks the idea of a man like him providing any assistance to a warrior of her caliber. Accepting the challenge, the young healer prepares his technique, while the captain warns that any failure will be met with the full force of her fists. She reminds him that their clan's mana has remained pure and untouched by outside influence for generations, making his interference highly unlikely to succeed. With a sudden, precise movement, he applies his sea-time magic to her pelvis, eliciting a sharp, involuntary cry of surprise from the captain. The force of the realignment sends a shockwave through her frame as he works to correct the deep-seated imbalance. As he finishes, she stands frozen in disbelief, feeling an incredible lightness spreading through her limbs as if a heavy weight has been lifted. Behind them, Jian and the other warriors watch in stunned silence, realizing that the outsider has actually succeeded in adjusting the captain's formidable body.